Post-Apocalyptic Black Technology Battleship System. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 101 Development. The trip to Zoo City Hospital went very smoothly. They moved a large amount of related materials back from the hospital point, coupled with the things Bale and Haoxiang and the others have collected outside these days. Their small villa is about to become a large material storage warehouse point. After solving the material problem, Xia Bai could start his own process of hunting zombies wholeheartedly. Point energy points are fundamental point, since the battleship was upgraded to the 3rd level. More useful and valuable things can be built, but the energy points required to build these things are also surprisingly high. Therefore, since the 3rd level, Xia Bai has almost no energy points. He had really saved up and used what he had. Now that he finally had time, he completely started the big blast in Zoo City. He cooperated with Li Jingyang and wandered around Nancheng district, attracting people. Zombies, look for explosion points, then gather the zombies and detonate them, and then grab the energy points. In the panic of Yi Kizhi and Yi Hanayu, Xia Bai was blooming everywhere in Nancheng district. The sound of explosions and the roars of zombies kept ringing in Zoo City. Some small groups of survivors were even frightened. He ran out of his hiding place, not daring to stay in Zoo City any longer, so he braved the heavy snow and ran outside in a hurry. Xia Bai was very arrogant and bombed everywhere in the city. Because he seemed to really want to make friends. Within 2 days, he sent a professional as promised, who was said to be a retired all-around special forces soldier, to teach Xia Bai and the others various combat skills. From individual combat to the placement and distribution of hidden cameras is meticulous. Although Xia Bai's survival skills looked very professional, he knew that his skills were actually based on experience or things he learned from other survivors. In many places and professions, can't get along. Therefore, Xia Bai also learned a lot from that special soldier and benefited a lot. At the same time, Xia Bai's energy points also grew faster and faster as time went by. In the early days, his growth rate was slower, but later it became faster and faster, because with the increase in energy points, the weapons with the ammunition and equipment complete and sufficient, Xia Bai was more confident. He caused a big explosion in Nancheng district. He didn't even leave in a hurry. He even transformed the RV into a battleship form, fired in the street, and even got out of the car to go into recharge. Knife. When the dense tide of zombies came over, he drove the battleship directly into the sky, passing through the zombie tide. During this period, he met Yi Hanayu and the others several times. Yi Hanayu even joked, "If I marry you, you can protect us." Although Yi Hanayu looks like the kind of big sister who doesn't mean anything, but after getting in touch with her, Xia Bai can see that she is actually a pretty good little girl. She is carefree and doesn't have any bad intentions. She also knows how to survive in the apocalypse. The simplest truth. It is worth mentioning that as time went by, Haoxiang and the others often encountered risks when they went out to search, but they basically never fought. There was already enough supplies in the villa and there was no need to fight for supplies, so they saw zombies will retreat immediately when they see a large number of them. Encountering zombies is the most common thing in a post-apocalyptic city, and no one thinks it is anything unusual. With the acquisition of energy points, Xia Bai's speed of making things also accelerated. After all, once there are more energy points, it is only a matter of time before items can be crafted. The warship has 2 manufacturing facilities, which greatly speeds up the process. The 12 solar cell matrices planned by Xia Bai were completed in less than a month, and an extra one was even built to be responsible for powering other things. However, it took Xia Bai a lot of time to install the solar cell matrix on the battleship. The level of computers in the battleship was not high. Xia Bai and Haoxiang spent a lot of time on the suggestions and guidelines given by the joint system. It took a few days to install this thing on top of the RV form. 6 solar cells were arranged in 2 rows. When switching to the battleship form, the solar cells in these 2 rows would move to both sides. stretched out. It stretched across both sides of the battleship like solar panels in a space station point, but after all, it was installed by Xia Bai himself, and it was obviously weak in terms of defense. Although he had reinforced it with steel plates on both sides, if he wanted to really make this thing a part of Xia Bai's battleship, he still needed to. When the third level is upgraded to the fourth level, new modules are merged through the system and additional energy points are paid. This thing will truly become one of the battleship modules, and even be integrated into the battleship's defense system point on the first day, when the matrix constructed of 12 solar cells was successfully connected. Xia Bai took the lead in trying an electromagnetic shield. This time, his shield was no longer the same thing that had disappeared in Ice City before. Under the BlackTech solar battery function of the two systems, the electromagnetic shield of the battleship can be supported for nearly half an hour when turned on to the maximum power. This means that at this moment, the battleship has the ability to survive among the zombies. The ability to roll around in the middle point with the successful launch of this thing. Xia Bai also began to build the primary energy body needed for the warship. This thing has 200 energy points each. The price is neither high nor low, but it is the lifeblood of whether the warship can fight for a long time, but it is small in size and easy to store. According to Xia Bai's plan, it would take 20 of these things to be truly complete. Point as time goes by, the weather in Langjiang province, located in the northernmost part of China, is getting worse and worse. The weather is getting colder and colder, and the snow is getting heavier and heavier. With the end of the world, the streets without sanitation workers to clean them will become worse. As a result, it became even more difficult to move forward. Fortunately, Xia Bai's battleship had amazing capabilities and could still move forward very stably in such weather. Time passed little by little, and Xia Bai's energy points were basically spent as soon as they were saved. In addition to these two things that must be built, such as the battleship's second weapon module, the gun, and all kinds of other messy things, it has to be built down to the smallest detail. From the outside, although the battleship is still the same battleship without upgrades, internally, all its functions can be put into normal use. Xia Bai even found a small truck was prepared to load their excess supplies when they left Zhu City in the future point. As the battleship's full functionality and strategic reserves reached its peak, Xia Bai's speed at hunting zombies also greatly increased. Point at the beginning of January, Xia Bai really started to accumulate energy points to move from level 3 to level 4. However, at this time, some zombies gradually began to follow them in the villa area where they were located. The auras of these living people chased after them. The speed at which these things gathered was much faster than Xia Bai estimated and imagined, and the number was slightly larger. Chapter 102 Baolan's Day, January 27th, 2019. Villa area in Zhu City. Point there was a puff and blood splattered. Point Baolan slashed into the neck of a zombie with a fire axe. As she exerted her strength, the zombie's entire body was suppressed by her, and it fell down, watching helplessly as her head was being destroyed by the zombie alive. Cut down the fire axe point and this rotten monster's entire head was cut off without much blood flowing out. The blood that flowed out was all smelly and dark red. Point the power of ordinary zombies is higher than that of ordinary people, and as an awakened person, Baolan's power is far higher than that of ordinary zombies. If she is facing zombies one-on-one, she can use practical actions to demonstrate what is meant by crushing zombies in all directions. Point Baolan exhaled slightly after hacking the zombie to death. At this moment, behind her, in the corner of the villa area, the corpses of 5 or 6 zombies were laid out in random directions. She looked around, then took a long breath, put the fire axe on her shoulder, turned and walked towards their mansion deep in the villa area. Point however, she didn't know if it was an illusion. The moment she turned around, she always felt sinister, as if something was staring at her from the shadows. Baolan is a very cautious person. She stood still because of this mysterious feeling. Even if there was nothing behind her, she turned around and checked the surroundings again to avoid any missing zombies. If a fish really slips through the net, any one of them may be in danger, and Baolan will not take such carelessness. However, she searched around and couldn't find any other zombies. Baolan exhaled slightly, holding the fire axe and murmuring, "Is it because there have been too many zombies coming in the past 2 days? And it has become a psychological shadow." At That moment, she stopped thinking about it and turned towards the villa point, and not long after Baelan left, a little boy slowly stood up on the rooftop of a villa on the side of the open space where she was just now. He was very handsome and his eyes were very bright, but his face was, I don't know why the clothes were all tied with tape, and the tape was full of blood. He silently looked at the direction in which Baelan disappeared, and said to himself awkwardly, that's their home. If we block this place, they have no place to run, right? And just a moment later, from behind the little boy, a centipede-like monster slowly crawled out, covered with black scales, and the exposed bloody head was ferocious and terrifying. As it slowly opened its mouth, there was something like several rows of shark-like teeth were clearly exposed, and it let out a low, eager roar when Baelan returned to the villa. Xia Bai and the others had not returned yet. From a distance, Baelan heard an earth-shattering explosion. Listening to the explosion, Baelan couldn't help but sigh. At this time, Yuzuki ran out of the corner of the villa, calling Sister Baelan for a hug. Baelan quickly stopped the little girl and said, I have zombie blood on my body, so don't hug her blindly, Yi. Yuzuki stuck out her tongue. Baelan smiled and walked into the villa. She found that no one was there today. Xia Bai took Hao Zhuang to kill zombies. Hao Zhuang and the others probably went outside to look for supplies. Only Xiang Buai was left in the house. Leaking spoke. Leaking is introverted and doesn't like to talk. She has almost the lowest sense of presence in the team and is timid. Although she also practices shooting, she doesn't dare to actually kill zombies unless she is cornered. But she has been doing things silently. Son, when Baelan came back, he saw her distributing and organizing supplies. Baelan took a look and said, this is Li. King smiled and said, well, didn't I hear Brother Xia say that we have to leave in a while? Anyway, there is nothing to do, so let's sort it out first. We have got too many supplies in the past 2 months. Baelan was stunned for a moment and said, then I'll wash off the blood and come back to help you. Xiaoki, go to the control room. If there are zombies around, come and call me, Yi. Xiaoki nodded, turned around and ran towards the monitoring room. Leaking said, no, I can be alone. You can have a good rest, but I heard that the people from the research institute on Shizu Mountain have evacuated, right, Bai? Lang nodded and said, yes, the man named Jikas, he sent a message 2 days ago, saying that the Changbei Mountain survivor base was completed and stabilized, and that it was safer over there, so they had to retreat there. Leaking nodded. When we leave here, will we also go to Changbei Mountain, Bai? Lan shook his head and said, I don't know. I heard Xia Bai say before that he seems to want to go to Shengjing. He always has his own plans, but he can't be wrong. Li King said, yes, Brother Xia is like a reborn person sometimes, as if he can predict everything in advance. Isn't the master annoying maniac enough? Baelan joked, then sighed and said, more and more zombies have gathered around in the past 2 days. Xia Bai also said that by the end of the new year at the latest, we will be here. I can't stand there anymore. There are hundreds of thousands of zombies in the city, and Xia Bai has been killing them for 2 months without seeing any less. Even if we have great abilities, we can't stay here for a long time. Leaking also nodded, looking a little worried. Baelan smiled and said, but don't worry. If the sky falls, there will be someone tall to hold it up. When Xia Bai collapses, that's when we will worry. When Leaking heard this, her expression was strange. She stared at Baelan for a while and said, I'm not worried about his waist. You are worried, Bai. Lang was stunned for a moment before reacting and said, okay, are you looking for death? At that moment, she chased Leaking and made a fuss all over the room, but after a while, Yuzuki, who was in the room inside, shouted, Sister Baelan, there are zombies, Bai. Lang could only sigh and go out with the fire axe. She basically had to be with wandering zombies this day. They expanded the scope of surveillance so they could detect the arrival of zombies earlier in areas outside the villa. However, the villa area, where they had lived for nearly 2 months, was indeed becoming more and more dangerous. It was not known whether the habitable place in Shengjing that Xia Bai mentioned was a place where they could live for a long time. Baelan took the fire axe and prepared the gun and went out. Outside the villa door, He turned to look at the fortress-like building behind him. They will leave here in the next year at the latest. Balan took a long breath and suddenly remembered. The new year of 2019 seems to be coming soon. Even in this apocalyptic world, the new year has a very special meaning for most Chinese people. Chapter 103 New Year's Carnival. February 4th, 2019, 21:56. Yi Hanyu was awakened by a strange noise. She opened her eyes drowsily and took a brief look around the classroom. This classroom is located in the corner of the 3rd floor. It used to be their classroom, but in the past 2 months, it has been transformed into a large common room. They spend the night here every night, with various tables and chairs between them. Among the supplies were female high school students sleeping wrapped in blankets. Yi Hanyu was woken up and was a little confused. She sat on the mattress on the ground. First she instinctively glanced out the window and saw that the lights in the school security room outside were still on. They would send 2 people there every night to be alert to the arrival of zombies. I don't know why, but the dim yellow light over there is slightly red tonight. But Yi Hanyu was really sleepy. Although today was New Year's Eve, they still went out to collect supplies in the morning. They also had to clean up more and more zombies outside Shanghai Middle School. They were already exhausted. After taking a look, they noticed that the lights were still on. I didn't think much about it while it was on. I felt relieved and planned to go back to sleep. After all, it's the Chinese New Year, and I've been vigilant for a few months. Now I can relax a little for one night, and it should be. Yi Hanyu suddenly noticed that the door to their room opened at some point. She remembered that the door had to be locked before everyone fell asleep, and only the sisters in the security room outside had the key. Probably someone went to the toilet and forgot to close the door. It's impossible not to close the doors in Langjiang province in winter. Yi Hanyu took a deep breath, stood up, and walked to the door as quietly as possible. Then she was about to close the door, but suddenly she heard some footsteps coming from outside. Yi Hanyu was slightly startled. She looked out and saw a tall shadow shaking at the end of the gloomy corridor. Is that a zombie? Yi Hanyu frowned and took out a fire axe from the door. She wanted to get a flashlight, but the room was full of people sleeping. Yi Hanyu hesitated for a moment, fearing to wake them up, and she didn't think a zombie would be like her, the opponent of the awakened. The zombies probably slipped in somewhere. If a large group of zombies really came in, the sisters in the security room would have already warned them. Yi Hanyu gently closed the door and walked towards the shadow. The corridor was dark, with only the girl's footsteps echoing coldly, and at the end of the corridor, the zombie was swinging back and forth like a ghost. And when she walked in, Yi Hanyu realized that it was not a zombie at all, but one of her sisters. Hanging from the ceiling alive and struggling, Yi Hanyu was taken aback and ran over quickly, trying to untie the other party. However, when she came to the side of her sister and touched her body suddenly swayed back. In the dimly lit corridor, Yi Hanyu finally saw clearly that she had already turned into a zombie. Half of her face, the face was gone, as if it had been smashed by something. Blood was flowing down the body. When he smelled Yi Hanyu's living breath, he immediately turned around and rushed towards her with teeth and claws. Darkness, zombies, blood. Even Yi Hanyu was startled and took 2 steps back. Fortunately, the zombie was suspended from the ceiling and did not come over. However, Yi Hanyu, who was retreating, felt that her thigh seemed to hit something. When she lowered her head, she saw a 7 or 8-year-old boy standing behind her, smiling strangely and horribly at her. Immediately afterwards, the boy raised a long bloody nail in his hand and plunged it directly into Yi Hanyu's leg. Yi Hanyu let out a miserable cry and fell down, while the boy screamed and climbed on top of her, raising his other hand. In that hand was a hammer with pieces of flesh and blood still in it. Yi Hanyu herself is that kind of courageous. She has been around for such a long time in the apocalypse. Although she was frightened, she still instinctively raised the fire axe in her hand and hit the little boy hard on the head. In the darkness, Yi Hanyu saw blood bursting out. As an awakener, her power was astonishing. The little boy let out a weird scream. Even if Yi Hanyu used the axe handle in panic, the little boy was thrown away on the spot. 5 or 6 meters away. It hit the ground hardpoint, but the other party stood up immediately, as if he couldn't feel the pain, and stumbled back. Jihan stood up immediately, but the ground mail penetrated his leg. She howled miserably and almost fell down again. At this moment, someone in the classroom in front heard the sound and ran out. Jihan was overjoyed to see this and shouted, "Stop him." However, as soon as she finished speaking, she saw a huge and terrifying figure emerge from the shadow of the corridor further back. Like a predatory tiger, it bit the man's body in an instant and pulled him up in the air. It broke into pieces, and screams resounded throughout the corridor. Jihan's face changed wildly. Immediately afterwards, the huge centipede-like creature slowly emerged from the darkness. Except for the head, which still had some human structure, almost no part of it could be understood by a normal creature. At this time, other people in the room were also awakened, but what greeted them was the huge monster that rushed all the way into the classroom. Jihan's hand holding the fire axe was shaking slightly, but she was not a squeamish person. She pressed the ground mail on her leg with her hand, gritted her teeth and stood up, dragging the fire axe in her hand, and planning to rush forward. However, at this moment, she suddenly turned her head consciously and saw, at the corner at the end of the corridor behind her, a child zombie, probably only about 2 or 3 years old, crawling up from below covered in blood. The little boy at the end of the corridor looked a little dazed. He looked at the scene in front of him and murmured, "I blocked you in your home. Where else could you run?" The wailing and screaming suddenly became the grandest carnival to welcome the new year in this Chengai middle school. Not far below the teaching building, at the security room at the front entrance, the place is also in a mess. Half of the wall has been torn open by some incredible creature, and there are wild beasts everywhere inside. Even the remains of bones and meat caused by eating and drinking were covered with blood, but the only old and dim lamp in the room was still shining. This dim and dim light shone through the blood-soaked. What shines through the glass is the kind of dim yellow with dark red light. Frost and snow fell from the sky, and a cold wind blew, making it look peaceful. But the zombies wandering here far and near were turning their heads stiffly one by one following the screams, and their empty gazes were all aimed at this bloody middle school. Please bookmark and recommend votes. Chapter 104 Attacker. February 4th. 2019 at 22:39. Xia Bai was the first to notice the abnormality. They don't go to bed as early as Jihan and the others. Xia Bai and the others have plenty of supplies and electricity. Coupled with the existence of Xia Bai, a hedonist, the beef has been stewed for the Chinese New Year. How much? Let alone go to bed early. At this point in time, they had just finished eating and turned on the TV to watch a movie or something as a New Year's program. At this time, Xia Bai noticed that the sky in the distance was a little red. Xia Bai was very experienced in this and realized almost instantly that it was not the red light reflected by the snow, but the flames that lit up the sky. Judging from the momentum, the fire is definitely not small. The people of the Zhejiang group have already evacuated, and there are fewer and fewer survivors in the city. Who would set a fire at this time? Are you crazy? During the Chinese New Year, Xia Bai felt that something was not right. He stood up immediately and walked out. When everyone saw this, they also showed strange expressions. When I came outside, I could see more clearly. There was indeed a fire somewhere. Looking at the direction, it seemed to be in the direction of Chengai Middle School. Xia Bai couldn't help but be a little suspicious. Could it be that Jihan and his gang were having a New Year's party? Although Jihan is pretty good at dealing with people, she is not a greedy person or a bad person, but she is definitely the kind of little girl who does whatever she wants, like burning buildings and having carnivals at the end of the new year. Xia Bai has seen such people before, even burning supplies. He even saw a lunatic from 13 Kings burning tobacco. That was called a madman. But at this moment, Bailan also came out of the villa and said solemnly, "If there is a situation, you'd better come and take a look." Xia Bai followed her back to the villa and came to the surveillance room. When she saw the picture inside, she was slightly surprised, because in the surveillance picture, the cameras they expanded to the periphery were clearly taking a picture. There were 2 toy cars parked at 2 intersections, each with a music box playing loud music, attracting zombies on both sides. Hao Zuang, who had been in the monitoring room, said, "I didn't see anyone. It's a remote control car, Chen." Xian Cheng said, someone wants to trick us. Xia Bai shook his head. If they were humans, what benefits would they get from attracting the corpse tide to kill Xia Bai and the others? This approach is rather like intelligent zombies. At this moment, Xian Cheng pointed to a surveillance screen on the other side and said, look, someone is coming in here. Xia Bai took a look. When he heard this, on the road in the direction of the main entrance, a large group of zombies were chasing a stumbling woman towards this direction. The woman was wearing the uniform of Chengai Middle School. She stumbled while walking. One of her arms was bitten off in half and was connected to her body by broken threads. Her body was obviously covered with scars, but she was running faster and faster. This meant that this woman you can turn into a zombie at any time. As she ran, she let out a heartrending cry that changed the tone of her voice. Help me. It seems that the fire is indeed Chengai Middle School. Although the distance between Chengai Middle School and the villa area is not far, it is definitely not close. This woman suffered such a serious injury. If she had run here by herself, she would have died halfway. Zombies, this is a bait. At this moment, Balan asked, is that gasoline on those zombies? Xia Bai hadn't noticed at first, but when he looked over at this moment, he saw a dozen zombies chasing after the girl from Chengai Middle School. Their bodies were all covered with gasoline, and they were being pulled by the woman and running towards the villa direction. At this moment, Xia Bai was almost certain that it must be an intelligent zombie. Knowing that there were surveillance cameras around them, using living people as bait, and trying to attract large groups of zombies. If the survivors wanted to deal with Xia Bai, it would be meaningless if they succeeded. The fire at Chengai Middle School was even more shocking. He took a deep breath and said, this may be an intelligent zombie. Everyone should be alert. Turn on the intercoms and turn the lights in the whole building to the brightest. Xia Bai had mentioned the intelligent zombies to Xian Cheng and the others before. Now that he mentioned it, although everyone's expressions changed slightly, they were still calm. But in just a moment, Xia Bai had already figured out the other party's purpose. The intelligent zombies seemed to want to divert them. The toy car and the zombies full of gasoline at the moment wanted to lure them out, or lure the battleship out. Xia Bai could ignore the toy car, because within a short time, the zombies following the sound may destroy this arrangement, but if zombies with gasoline are put in, it may ignite the entire building here. If Xia Bai and the others want to save this building, the best way is to intercept these zombies full of gasoline now. And Xia Bai knew that, if the other party knew the existence of the monitor, he must also know the existence of the battleship. In a city full of zombies, it was really difficult to distinguish intelligent zombies. As long as the other party hid among the corpses and hid well, no one can detect them, but they can observe humans silently. There are no heavy weapons left by the military that can be picked up anywhere in Zoo City. The other party dared to come here, even though they knew the warships were here. They probably have extreme mutants and the like. As long as Xia Bai is diverted here, the extreme mutants over there will be destroyed. I'm afraid we have to take action. Either destroy the battleship first, or kill the people outside first, and then go back and defeat them one by one. As long as the opponent hunts in the right order, it doesn't seem to be a problem to wipe out Xia Bai and the others. If the other party dares to come to your door on New Year's Eve, he must be confident to catch them all. But this is in line with the usual behavior of zombies. They gather in groups and take advantage of the zombies to kill them in one fell swoop. This intelligent zombie knows a lot. He must have been observing Xia Bai and the others for a long time and has not made any move. Xia Bai estimates that there may only be one or two of these intelligent zombies, and they have not been intelligent for a long time. In the past few months, I had been studying for a long time, and I was not sure how to deal with Xia Bai or prevent the survivors from leaving its territory when I was exposed, so I used this method. Overnight, from Chengai Middle School to the villa area, overnight, they swept across the few survivors gathering points in Zoo City, trying to wipe out all the survivors here overnight. There is no difference between intelligent zombies and human newborns when they first develop intelligence, except that their learning ability and understanding are extremely amazing. What limits them is the space environment and the things and affairs they can come into contact with. Therefore, the knowledge of many intelligent zombies' faces are often related to the environment. Chapter 105 Dark Moment. Xia Bai looked around and said thoughtfully, Bailan, you take the people to pack things first. Chen Shai and Cheng, you go drive the truck we parked outside to bring supplies. Hao Zhuang, you continue to watch the surveillance. Li Jinggyang, you keep watch. Good entrance and exit in the house. Don't let anything in. Shai and Cheng, come with me to sail the battleship. He patted Chen Shai and Cheng on the shoulder and walked out side by side with him. If the two of them dared to leave the house, they would be both bait and the main force to attack. Once the intelligent zombie couldn't calm down and attacked him alone outside, the two of them took action. They could turn around and get into the RV. When the battleship takes off, no matter what comes, they will all die. Xia Bai's idea is also very clear. At worst, I don't want this villa anymore. He just needs to block the zombies from the main entrance of the villa where they are. Even if the fire spreads to the whole building, it will take time. With this time, they will definitely be able to retreat. When the time comes, the intelligent zombies will either watch helplessly as Xia Bai uses the battleship to clear the way and evacuate quickly, or they will come to force him point. But before the living, even if they are intelligent zombies, few can keep their mouths shut. When Xia Bai left the villa, he first turned on the giant searchlight that was removed from the Zoo City Stadium, making the front of the villa bright. However, when Xia Bai was about to turn on the lights at the back, something changed. It came into being. The intelligent zombie was more impatient than he thought. Hao Zhuang's voice came out like a barrage from the walkie-talkie. I don't know what it is, but it rushed directly from under the surveillance camera at the back. It's incredibly fast. It's an extreme mutant. It's incredibly fast. Hao Zhuang's voice became louder and louder, and finally turned into a panic shout. Li Jinggyang. It's coming. Everyone, be careful. Xia Bai just walked to the corner in front of the villa when he heard a loud noise coming from behind the villa. The intelligent zombie had no intention of taking the lead in attacking the two decoys, Xia Bai and Chen Shai and Cheng, nor did it first attack Xia Bai's battleship. Instead, it was running towards the villa. Although the opponent was reckless, he was smarter than Xia Bai thought. The opponent had long realized that Xia Bai and his team were short of manpower. While retreating and defending, the real gap was actually the villa itself. Xia Bai instantly realized the purpose of the other party's attack: cut off the power. Xia Bai directly picked up the walkie-talkie and ran towards the villa while saying, "Who is on the second floor?" Immediately, forget it. Everyone evacuates. Let's get on the battleship first. They are playing the front, so let's. He couldn't finish what he said, because at this moment, the entire villa, which was brightly lit in front of him, suddenly fell into darkness. That was because the second floor electric gate connected to the solar cells was cut off. Inside and outside the villa, it was dark for a moment. At the same moment, gunshots and howls of extreme mutants rang out from the first floor. The intelligent zombie, probably brought in by this extreme mutant, immediately reached the second floor and cut off the power supply point. And at this moment, a timid voice came from the message channel. "I'm on the second floor." That was Yuzaoka's voice. At the same moment, the dying woman from Chengai Middle School had already led a group of zombies to the entrance of the villa courtyard where Xia Bai and the others were. Xia Bai gasped, but he pulled back Chen Shai and Cheng, who was rushing into the villa, and said in a deep voice, "Get on the battleship." At the same moment, there was darkness in the villa. When the extreme mutants collided, she seemed to see a shadow swinging into the second floor. Then there was a series of sounds on the second floor, mixed with screams and Yuzaoka's voice. Then, the sky sank. Darken. But it all happened too fast. Bailan was almost instantly targeted by the giant centipede-like extreme mutant, but she also realized that the intelligent zombie might have already figured out the inside of these buildings through other villa structure. Otherwise it would not have been possible to cut off the power supply to the entire building so quickly. She took a slight breath, feeling a little anxious. However, the building was dark, and she could only hear some rustling sounds. The extremist mutant was crawling on the ground, and the densely packed joints made the penetrating sound. At this moment, the sound of battleships firing came from outside, and the centipede inside the building turned his head like lightning. With the firelight outside, Bailan once again saw clearly the terrifying body of the extreme mutant. At the same time, she also saw, opposite her, Hao Zhuang gesturing to her, asking her to go upstairs to see the situation. Immediately afterwards, Hao Zhuang opened fire to attract the attention of the extreme mutant, giving her bail and creates opportunities. Hao Zhuang did not act blindly. He and Yang Xin seemed to have made preparations early. With mutual cooperation, they retreated into the small space in the villa together. The extreme mutant was chasing behind them, getting faster and faster. Zhuang and Yang Xin ran all the way, firing and blasting it with various things to block its progress. Baelan gritted his teeth, glanced here, and rushed upstairs. The intelligent zombies, Yizaoki and Li King are all on it. The intelligent zombies must be dealt with as soon as possible. At the same time, the outside of the villa had turned into a sea of fire. When Xia Bai's battleship just rose, the girl from Chengai Middle School still showed hope. However, she was seriously infected, and all Xia Bai could do was to save her with a shuttle of bullets. Then, three people. The 10mm machine cannon began to pour out firepower crazily. The dozens of zombies that poured in from outside were knocked down one by Xia Bai. The gasoline was ignited by gunpowder and burned like crazy. At this time, an unusual individual emerged from this group of ordinary zombies. It was an extreme humanoid mutant. Unlike the centipede, its degree of mutation was not high. There were iron sheets hanging on the front and back. It used to be inconspicuous among the corpses in the darkness, but it suddenly appeared at this moment, jumped 6 or 7 meters high, and rushed towards Xia Bai's battleship. The body was smaller than the centipede, but the speed was incredibly fast. In the darkness and firelight, it seemed to be just a rising black shadow. Xia Bai instantly opened the battleship's shield, then turned the muzzle of the gun, and used a 30mm caliber bullet to force it back to the ground. At the same time, he lowered the height of the battleship, closed and fired, beating the extreme mutant alive. The blood and mud on the ground left a small smoky pit on the ground. Immediately afterwards, Xia Bai turned the cannon again to clean up the zombies. If these zombies were to set fire to the building, all the supplies they had gathered in the past few months would be in vain. Please collect and recommend votes. Chapter 106. Big Black Thick Italian Cannon. Yizaoki saw a little boy at the end of the corridor on the second floor. He was standing in a large shadow and looked extremely blurry. He had a hammer in his hand and a hammer in the other hand. A plastic mask of a grey wolf stained with blood, thus covering half of his face. At his feet lay a man that was leaking. This woman's head was smashed by this delicate and frail looking little boy. She was lying on the ground now, with her brains and blood flowing all over the floor. The individual abilities of intelligent zombies are similar to those of awakened ones. Even a child can possess incredible power. Under the bonus of the virus, leaking was the first to discover this little boy. She had actually heard Xia Bai talk about it, but seeing that he was just a child, she never expected that there would be such an exaggerated gap. The corridor was dark, the smell of blood filled the air, and heavy gunshots came from downstairs. Yizaoki was a little scared, and took 2 steps back, then tremblingly took out a gun from her arm. She also practiced shooting. She never hit anything though. But she realized from Xia Bai's voice just now on the communicator that this boy about her age was the intelligent zombie. If it can be killed here, everyone will save a lot of trouble. So the gun is a good thing, the boy said. His vocal cords seemed to be damaged, and his voice sounded like iron scraping. But I can't use it well, so I don't like to use it. Don't you think that crushing someone's skull with a hammer would be a more interesting way to kill someone? Boom. Yee. Yizaoki fired. Her gun was raised more than 60 degrees, and it could not be deflected any further. She herself fell to the ground. At this moment, Yizaoki was not stunned. She stood up immediately, covered her hands, and ran backwards. At the same moment, the boy also started running. He smashed the mask in his hand on the ground and ran like a wild beast. Half of the face exposed under the mask was broken, and the white bone stubble was embedded in the flesh and blood, which looked particularly terrifying. This was caused by Yihanayu's axe. Yizaoki turned around and glanced, shouted, and ran forward stumblingly. However, at this moment, a figure rushed out from the corridor behind, holding a spray gun in his hand, and pointed it at the little boy behind. One shot, but the distance was not close enough. A large amount of blood exploded on the boy's body, and he fell backwards and flew out, but he did not die. But Baelan, who rushed up from downstairs, had no time to go up and finish the attack. She pulled Yuzuki behind her, turned the muzzle of the gun, and rushed downstairs like lightning, because the centipede was nearly 4 meters long. He was following behind her, now rushing upwards along the building at an incredible speed. Balan opened fire without hesitation. In the dark corridor, the sprayer's muzzle spurted out angry flames. However, the monster swung its densely packed joints indiscriminately, causing blood and flesh to fly, but it failed to hit any vital points. Balan's face changed instantly. She pushed Yuzuki into the shadows, held the sprayer in her backhand, and pulled out a tactical dagger in one hand, as if she was going to fight for her life. However, at this moment, a loud roar suddenly sounded in the field, and then, a light shone from the window, making the entire corridor transparent. That was Xia Bai's battleship taking off. At this moment, Balan instinctively breathed a sigh of relief. And then, the 30mm machine gun opened fire directly, shooting through the building from the outside, leaving dense wounds on this huge living target. The extreme mutant and the building downstairs collapsed together, smashing into the first floor below. Smoke and dust billowed into the sky, and in the dark night, the rising warships poured firepower at fixed points at extremely low altitudes. People and materials were all in the building, and Xia Bai didn't dare to use the cannon casually. And the extreme mutant was so astonishingly ferocious that it actually carried the machine cannon and dragged its torn flesh and blood body from slaying towards the main body of the battleship suspended at ultra low altitude. Over there, a little boy with half of his body beaten to pieces, struggled to hold up half of his body. Looking at the monster that was rushing towards the battleship against the light, a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth, and he said ferociously to Balan, "Here, you know the secret to taming this beast? You have to be a zombie first." He turned his head and looked at the extreme mutant that jumped toward the battleship with a grin. He has seen how powerful the battleship is. It is not something that ordinary zombies can withstand, nor can ordinary zombies keep. But this extreme mutant must have the ability to overturn that thing. This group of dangerous humans, I must die here tonight. There was half a smile on his ferocious and terrifying face, but this smile quickly solidified, just like the solidified and dried blood on his face. And if Xia Bai knew what this guy was thinking, he could only tell him that you are overthinking. Such an extreme mutant may pose a threat to the main body of the battleship, but with a shield, how can this thing withstand a battleship? This was just a misjudgment made by this intelligent zombie who had never seen Xia Bai's battleship attack at full strength. At this moment, Xia Bai, who had already wiped out all the burning zombies outside, was just waiting for this to come out. The other party was in the building, so Xia Bai was wary and couldn't fire with all his strength. But if you dared to come out, the situation would be different. Where is my Italian cannon? Xia Bai took a deep breath and ferociously dropped the muzzle of the number 2 weapon module that had already released the safety protocol. From the outside, under the battleship, a cannon suddenly took shape in the mechanical transmission. Then, next to it, a cannon appeared, hit the giant centipede-like extreme mutant with a single shot. The caliber of the battleship's gun was 100mm. When the gun came down, there was first a huge muffled sound in the space, and then the body of the extreme mutant exploded like plasma, and the blood fell overwhelmingly. Balan quickly hugged Yuzuki and turned around, covering the girl's mouth and nose with her hands. Extreme mutants also carry infectious viruses. Most of the monster's body was blown to pieces, and the remaining half hit the ground with a bang and was instantly killed by Xia Bai. Xia Bai simultaneously moved from the naval gun console to the machine gun position on the other side. He was holding a cigarette in his mouth and looking at the zombie boy below through the 360-degree holographic screen. He slowly press and hold the fire button. Come, no matter how fast you learn. Have you ever seen this big black 100mm Italian cannon? The little intelligent zombie boy has indeed never seen Xia Bai's naval gun. His knowledge comes from observation and self-learning. Although they grow much faster than humans, in such an apocalyptic world, where there is no internet, even if they no matter how fast you grow, there will always be gaps in your knowledge. Although Xia Bai has been arrogantly blowing up zombies everywhere in the city, this is the first time that his naval gun has fired, for no other reason than that the shells are too expensive. Yes, Xia Bai can get 20 energy points with one shot. If you use this to hit ordinary zombies, you won't be able to blow up the head. If you shoot with this, you may not even be able to get back. It's like using a cannon to kill flies. The previous description of the caliber of naval guns in this chapter was incorrect. It has been corrected and republished. I'm sorry. Chapter 107, a single man relying on his strength. Therefore, now Xia Bai's shot shook the sky, and the intelligent zombies were stunned. And Xia Bai's machine gun failed to take the next step, because at this time, Bailan had already reloaded the gun in his hand, walked over step by step, and shot 3 times in a row, directly killing the zombie. His head was beaten to pieces. Bailan glanced at Li Qing's body in the distance, and kicked the bloody hammer away from the distance point outside. Xia Bai was a little dumbfounded. He originally planned to hang this intelligent zombie alive to see if any other companions would come to rescue him, but he didn't expect Bailan to start so quickly. He controlled the battleship to land from the sky. Li Qing's death made everyone feel a little gloomy. Li Jingyang was also injured when the big centipede hit the wall and rushed in. Li Jingyang was knocked down by a collapsed wall. He passed out directly. Of course, if not for this, if this guy had really stopped in front of that extreme mutant, he would probably have died a violent death. However, after this battle, half of the villa collapsed, and more shadowy zombies appeared around the villa. This really fulfilled Xia Bai's previous deduction. If a fight really breaks out, here I definitely can't stay any longer. They carried Li Jingyang into the RV, and began to gather supplies. Xia Bai and the others had already prepared for the day of their departure. They had prepared a medium-sized box truck, Omok S3, in the past few months. The space has become scarce, so the existence of box trucks has become very necessary. Their movements were fast, and they required the labor force of an awakened person like Bailan. They had finished loading in less than an hour, and the forward of the corpse group was almost there, looking like a ghost in the middle of the night in the courtyard of the villa. Same point. Seeing this, Xia Bai got into the car directly. Bailan and Chen Shai and Sheng were in charge of the van, while the rest of the people were on Xia Bai's RV battleship. At that moment, he no longer hesitated, and directly driving the car ahead, Xia Bai ran through the crowd of corpses, and rushed out of the villa area before the corpse wave really formed a large scale. However, just after leaving the villa area, Xia Bai saw a car coming towards him. The driver was very amateurish. He drove erratically and almost hit Xia Bai and the others. Xia Bai stopped the car hurriedly and found that the person driving was the bespectacled girl on Yi Hanayu's side. The woman stood in front of Xia Bai in their car, panting heavily. She glanced at Xia Bai, who was a little stunned, and said, "Hanayu asked us to come. A group of zombies with strong intentions attacked us." She asked, "Let me remind you." Xia Bai raised his hand and shot a zombie that rushed up from behind this woman. He remembered that this woman was called Chen Yingying, but he didn't expect that Yi Hanayu was quite interesting. She was really a good neighbor of China, and her shield was not in vain. Of course, Xia Bai couldn't say such words. He smiled and said, "Thank you then. This thank you is sincere. In this era, there are still not many people who will rush to notify others if there is danger." Chen Yingying nodded slightly and hurriedly went to the electric car. But after taking 2 steps, she remembered something again. She stopped, glanced at Xia Bai here, and whispered, "You have medicine. Is it hemostatic, anti-inflammatory, anything?" Xia Bai frowned slightly and said, "What's going on, Chen?" Yingying pursed her lips and said after a moment, "It's Hanayu. I put her in the church in front." "The church in front?" Hearing this, Xia Bai had a strange look on his face, but he had a good impression of Yi Hanayu and the others. He might be able to help, and the most important thing was, Xia Bai really wanted to go to the church in front. Take a walk around the church. He still hasn't forgotten how he was almost fed to zombies by that guy in the church in his last life. So, Xia Bai let the girl get into the car, adjusted the direction slightly, and rushed towards the church at lightning speed. During this process, Xia Bai briefly inquired about the situation, and found out what was going on. The plan of the intelligent zombie might be to wipe out the survivors. Yi Hanayu and the others from Chenggayu Middle School inexplicably became Xia Bai. He was the first to be attacked. About a dozen people died. Yi Hanayu set the whole building on fire. Relying on her own strength as an awakener, she managed to run out with Chen Yingying. She was seriously injured. but insisted that Chen Yingying come over to inform Xia Bai, but refused to let Chen Yingying ask Xia Bai and the others for help. However, Xia Bai heard something else from this description. Yi Hanyu probably knew that her injuries were serious and felt that she could not survive, so she asked Chen Yingying to come over. Firstly, she really wanted to remind Xia Bai and the others. Secondly, she really wanted Xia Bai to Baineng took this reminder and pulled Chen Yingying point, but Xia Bai didn't think much about it. His battleship's medical bay was just a mobile operating table. Yi Hanyu was still an awakened person, so he might not be able to save someone. Moreover, this person was indeed a good person. If he could be pulled over on his side, wouldn't he? Are there 2 awakened ones? There are 2 awakened people in the survivor team of less than 10 people. This is luxurious Lanoop that Xia Bai could not even imagine in his previous life, but Xia Bai's next move seemed a bit strange in the eyes of Bailan and other people who were familiar with Xia Bai. After all, Xia Bai has been here for such a long time. The man in the church still knows a little about Xia Bai and his group of survivors. Seeing them coming at such a speed, it was a nice word, but Xia Bai didn't without saying a word. He punched the man head on, pushed the man to the ground, and gave him a beating. Finally, he pulled out a gun, loaded it with a bang, and then shot him with a loud bang. In fact, Xia Bai is not the kind of person who holds grudges very much. Although he knows that the other party is here, Xia Bai has never been too lazy to come over to make trouble. But now that he is on his way, he can't bear it anymore. In his last life, he didn't even get caught in New Oda's Ice City, but he was almost fed to zombies by this guy. After Xia Bai beat this guy to death, he went upstairs with a gun and beat this guy's zombie wife to death as well. I don't care if you are sincere or you trick a passerby into feeding my wife and me, but if you trick Xia Bai, you won't be able to live well for the rest of your life. When Xia Bai came back, everyone looked at him with a strange expression. Yi Hanyu had already fallen into a coma, but she seemed to have realized that the church was a devil's cave. She grabbed the legs of the table in the church tightly, and it took a lot of strength to pull her down. That Chen Yingying cried so much that Yi Hanyu was dead. In fact, Yi Hanyu's injuries were indeed close to the point of certain death. Her leg was penetrated by a nail, and there was a large wound of more than 10 centimeters of flesh and blood on her back. Just by looking at the injuries, Bai could tell that the first person to be attacked before attacking them was probably Chengaiyu Middle School. Neither the nails nor the injuries on the back could be created by ordinary zombies. In addition to this, Yi Hanyu also had wounds of various sizes, and he didn't know how much blood flowed out. With such an injury, it was possible to save her before the end. But right now, Chen Yingying was desperate and cried while hugging Yi Hanyu. I don't know why, when Xia Bai sees this Chen Yingying, she always thinks of her former crying male roommate in Bingcheng prison. After Xia Bai talked hard for a while, he pulled the girl away and threw Yi Hanyu into his medical warehouse. After using the medical warehouse to scan, he set up a series of procedures based on the recommendations of the medical warehouse's brain. Chen Yingying watched this series of processes from the side and then watched the entire translucent medical warehouse begin to become opaque and enter the closed sterile surgery mode. She was slightly stunned. She looked at the people around her. Xia Bai pointed at the medical warehouse in front of him again, with tears in his eyes and his mouth wide open, with a look of shock on his face as he didn't know what to say. Xia Bai was scared by this guy's crying. He was a little curious. Yi Hanyu was such a person. How could he have such a crying, confused girl under his command? The church was still some distance away from the villa area. It was getting dark at the moment, so Xia Bai and the others planned to spend the night in the church. As soon as he got out of the car, he saw Chen Shai and Cheng sneaking up to him and said, "Brother Xia, tell me the truth. Do you have feelings for that girl Yi Hanyu? WTF? Hey, stop pretending. If you weren't worried, why did you beat that girl in the church so hard?" Xia Bai, dear book lovers, please collect and recommend. Chapter 108. He has a grudge against zombies. The next day, the New Year's Day of 2019. Xia Bai and the others left Zhu City early in the morning. The fire at Chengaiyu Middle School burned for half the night, and it didn't stop. The whole sky showed a dark red color. When they drove away, they could still see the sky rising from that direction. thick smoke. The atmosphere in the team is not good. Although leaking has never had a high sense of presence. After all, they have been together for such a long time and died so easily. It is still somewhat difficult to recover. As for Chen Yingying, Yi Hanai's injury has stabilized, but she still hasn't woken up. Last night, for Chen Yingying, they were completely tortured by zombies. If Yi Hanai hadn't been an awakened person who forced back the extreme mutants and intelligent zombies by burning down the building, it is difficult for them to survive in the end. Yi Hanai woke up. The medical treatment not only dealt with her injuries, but even the tattoos on Yi Hanai's face were gone. However, without the tattoos, she looked better, especially now that her face was pale and she was so fearless. The unafraid female ruffian's temperament was lost, and instead she showed a bit of the fragility that a real little girl should have. Xia Bai was okay. He took care of the life and death of both familiar and unfamiliar people. In the apocalypse, it is normal for a lot of people to die due to emergencies. However, after the intelligent zombies made such a fuss, Xia Bai's plan to leave Zhu City in March became a bit messy. At this time, the Changbai Mountain Survivor Base has just been completed and stabilized. From the fact that Chikazi has passed away, it is not difficult to see that in the next period of time, the survivors from the entire 3 eastern provinces will probably converge in that direction. In the previous life, at this stage, intelligent zombies have not yet appeared, and even if they do appear, they are still in their infancy. Therefore, for the human survivors living in this stage, it is a precious transition period. In the end point, you can visit the Changbai Mountain Survivor Base, but Xia Bai's real destination is actually the future Shengjing survivors. At this time, it may not have been formed yet and there may not even be many people there, but for Xia Bai, it is not a good idea. Not a good thing. As for the Changbai Mountain Survivor Base, Xia Bai really has no plans to stay there for a long time. There are 2 main reasons. One is, of course, the problem of battleships. Although the 3rd level battleships are strong, in the face of their huge military power, disputes are still possible. And secondly, the Changbai Mountain Survivor Base was built in the early days of the apocalypse, and has gathered almost most of the large-scale armed forces in the 3 eastern provinces. Therefore, it is very powerful, but also very chaotic. The most critical thing is yes, the group of people Xia Bai dislikes the most is the 13 Kings of Changbai Mountain, and he doesn't want to go to Changbai Mountain to join in the fun. The Changbai Mountain Survivor Base is one of the largest survivor bases in the 3 eastern provinces. In addition to the military and government forces, the survivors' power in the Changbai Mountain Survivor Base is also a part that cannot be underestimated. But in every case, survivor forces have different survival modes and behaviors. For example, the Zhuang group has a military background and is strong. Even in the end of the world, it is still a consortium business, while those like the Mutual Rescue Association, the people who formed the group, were initiated by the survivors' demands for mutual help from within. The internal stickiness was low, but it was still a powerful force, and the situation was quite mild. The so-called 13 Kings were another way of doing things. If the first 2 categories are the most basic ones, then the 13 Kings are the unreasonable ones. As the name suggests, the 13 Kings were first formed by 13 powerful awakened people. Although the awakened people, there is no such exaggerated ability as controlling lightning and controlling electricity, but just like the difference between the strength and weakness of extreme mutants, there is also a certain gap between awakened people. These people were the kind of super powerful awakened people when they started. They adhered to a tyrannical and domineering style, which became even more violent when the survivors arrived in Changbai Mountain, because in the apocalypse, there are not a few bastards in the popular sense who bully the weak, take advantage of others, and do all kinds of evil. And in the survivor base established by the military like the Changbai Mountain Survivor Base, their situation is often embarrassing. Therefore, even the 13 Kings did not expect that their power would expand like this. In addition, among these awakened people, there were indeed people who knew how to run the business. Later, they would grow together and become the most powerful power in the Changbai Mountain Survivor Base. One of several survivor forces in the apocalypse, bad people often live better than good people. Although this may not sound very good, it is true. In the end, the Changbai Mountain Survivor Base had problems from within. Although it was not entirely due to this organization, it was also related to a certain extent. If Xia Bai really went to the Changbei Mountain survivor base, there would be more conflicts between people. The upgrade speed of battleships will be slowed down. In the late stages of the previous apocalypse, the situation almost turned from bad to worse. In addition to the problems within the survivor base, the number of intelligent zombies outside was also increasing. There was even a type of zombie called sweeper by the survivors. The zombies refer to the militarized armed forces formed by intelligent zombies. Each intelligent zombie has the power of an awakened person. After being formed into an armed force, they will raid the periphery of the entire 3 eastern provinces. They will not attack the survivor base, but it specializes in killing survivors and military personnel who come out of the survivor base, and even those survivors who are wandering outside. Their combat power is large but scattered, and the apocalypse has created a natural home for them. They are almost invincible. Disadvantageously, the purpose is to turn those survivor bases into isolated islands on land. Xia Bai currently has over 7,000 energy points in his hand. Although the situation has changed, and he left Zhu City before accumulating 10,000 energy points, if he hurry up and complete the upgrade in March or April, it shouldn't be a problem. Moreover, the warships are now strong enough and can be developed by themselves. Improving hard power is the key. Xia Bai may go to the Changbei Mountain survivor base to trade some materials that he cannot get for the time being, or that are not suitable for building with energy points. But after all, he couldn't stay there for long. They set out from Zhu City, far away from big cities like Bingcheng, and drove along the highway for about half a day. They didn't have GPS, and they didn't travel to other provinces all year round. Walking along the straight road, in this situation, I can't find the direction. How can the devil make such a big mistake? Of course, walking along the highway has a high probability of encountering zombies and survivors. Xia Bai killed zombies along the way, and the several waves of survivors he met were also very wary of each other and looked at each other from a distance. Xia Bai was not in a hurry. He had plenty of time anyway. He met a small group of zombies on the road. He even stopped to hunt and save some energy points. After walking for half a day, he arrived at the border of Liao province and Ji province. He was refueling. Stop at rest stop location. He is not short of fuel now. The reason why he stopped here is because there are many scrapped vehicles parked here and there are many zombies wandering inside and outside. Such a small number of zombies in the wild are what Xia Bai is thinking about. With the energy points, Hao Zhuang volunteered to follow behind Xia Bai and strike. Others came down to rest one after another. Yi Hanai was worthy of being an awakened person. After half a day, although she was still very weak, she was able to stand up. With the support of Chen Yingying and Bai Lan, she sat on a stool outside the gas station, silently. After looking at Xia Bai and Hao Zhuang for a while, he turned to ask Bai Lan next to him, does he have a grudge against zombies? I see other people avoid zombies if they can. But why is he more excited when he sees zombies than when he sees yogurt? Bai Lan was silent for a moment. He has a grudge against the zombies. Please collect it. Please vote for recommendation. Asking for all kinds of support. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 109. If you don't go, it will be too late. Yi Hanai just asked casually, with no intention of going into details. Almost all of her people died last night, and she felt more uncomfortable than anyone else. Those were not passers-by A, B, D, whom she met after the apocalypse. Those people were her friends before the apocalypse. Coupled with her weakness, she quickly closed her eyes again and rested her mind. However, Chen Yingying was a little worried and said, Hanayu, if that doesn't work, let's get back to the car. Lying down all the time will make you useless. Bai Lan beside her laughed. She had also dealt with Yi Hanayu several times. She knew this guy's character well and didn't think there was anything wrong with it. Just when she was about to say a few words, Li Jinggyang, who was having fun over there, suddenly said, a convoy is coming. Baelan suddenly stood up and looked to the other side. It was a convoy of survivors. The leader was a desert king, followed by various models. There were 6 vehicles in total. They also found someone at the gas station, stopped the car and got out, and over there, Xia Bai, who had just cleared away the zombies in the gas station, also walked out and met the group of people. This group of people seems a bit strange to Xia Bai. There are 6 cars in total, but there are only 2 people in each car at most, and they don't carry a lot of supplies. If it weren't for the blood on the car, each person would be armed, and even like a convoy traveling before the end of the world. The leader of this group of people is a middle-aged man. He doesn't wear much in the winter, but every part of his body is covered with various things. He wears sunglasses and has stubble all over his face, which makes him look uneasy. A metaphorical sense of apocalyptic vicissitudes. The man raised the gun in his hand from a distance, shook it at Xia Bai, and then inserted it into the holster on his waist in front of Xia Bai. Nearly half a year has passed since the apocalypse. Guns are no longer a rare thing in the early days of the apocalypse, and some unwritten rules spread among survivors have long been formed. Xia Bai also put away his gun in front of the other party and then slowly approached. The bearded man said, "Brother, do you own this gas station?" Xia Bai turned his head and glanced, then nodded politely. In fact, he is not short of oil, and he has no intention of using the oil in this gas station because the current RVs and Chinese style trucks are full and there is no room for anything. But when he says this now, he actually wants to see if there is anything in this group of survivors that surprises him. The bearded man said, "Can we get some oil from you? I'm willing to trade a pistol and bullets." In the first half of the apocalypse, even a pistol is still valuable, but changing the oil, Xia Bai really didn't like pistols and pistol bullets, and he noticed that the 6 cars behind him were empty. This guy probably couldn't bring anything else. He said, "Where are the other things? Is there anything else?" The bearded man looked troubled. After a moment, he took off a gold ring from his left hand and said, "We were in a hurry when we came out. We really didn't bring anything with us. I'll add this 150 liters. Brother, do you think it's okay?" To be honest, Xia Bai saw one word on the faces of these survivors. Poverty. But this person is actually not bad. Even at this point, he still discussed with Xia Bai politely and had no intention of using the simplest violence in the apocalypse to solve the problem. Xia Bai glanced at the gold ring and said, "Is this a wedding ring?" The bearded man was stunned for a moment and said, "Well, yes. Why did you? You don't look like someone who wears gold and silver. What you are wearing is probably a wedding ring. But these days, why don't you get a big diamond ring?" The bearded man sighed and said, "Everyone is gone, so even if we go to a jewelry store to get a diamond ring, it's meaningless." Xia Bai said, "Come on, you only have a few grams of this stuff. You can just take it yourself." The bearded man looked happy. "Really?" Xia Bai said, "Really? But what are you going to do? You don't have anything in the car, just people and guns." When the bearded man heard this, he showed a strange expression and said, "Haven't you heard?" "What? Did you hear? The military has a big move today." The stubbled man hesitated for a moment, pursed his lips, and said, "You are very interesting. I will tell you the news. The military has determined that the Liujia town in front of you has intelligent zombies. Today, 2 battalions were mobilized to cooperate with the bombing of fighter planes to completely clear out Liujia town and capture an intelligent zombie alive. So, I see that my brother is also a sensible person, so I don't need to tell you the rest, right?" Of course Xia Bai understood. The Changbei Mountain Survivor Base and the Bingcheng Prison Survivor Base are different. The 37th Division in Bingcheng Prison at that time was a local division. The end of the world came suddenly, and it was stretched both in manpower and weapons. But Changbei Mountain, the survivor base, gathers forces from 3 provinces. When the Changbei Mountain survivors of the previous generation were established, they began to recover the area with Changbei Mountain as a center. They mostly used carpet bombing to deal with zombies, and then sent ground troops to deal with it. As for the NJ method, it was said that there was even a plan to recapture the 3 northeastern provinces at that time. However, the situation changed later, and the plan to recapture the 3 northeastern provinces failed. After the bombing, there are still a lot of supplies left in the old city. This is the opportunity for the survivors. Isn't it better to follow the army, to pick up supplies than running into a city full of zombies? For the vast majority of survivors, this is pie in the sky point, and if according to what this bearded man said, the military launched a clearing operation all the way to Liujia town, located on the border between Longji and Longji provinces, in order to capture living intelligent zombies, the scope of the bombing would not be too large. There are even more materials left that can be picked up. This group of people set off in a light vehicle simply to collect supplies. Xia Bai chatted with the other party for a few words, confirmed the location of Liujiazan, and asked them to go fill up the tank. However, he himself looked thoughtful. According to the bearded man, there are 20 to 30,000 zombies in Liujia town. If the military is in front, to attract the attention of large groups of zombies, the risk of entering the city from the edge with full firepower will be greatly reduced, and the energy points that can be harvested. Xia Bai rubbed his chin, as if he thought of something beautiful. The corners of his mouth began to rise slightly. Bailan, who was on the side, glanced at Xia Bai here, and said with caution, "We are not short of supplies. You don't want to go over and kill zombies, do you?" Xia Bai said, "Yes, let's do it like this. Let's all move and run forward. If we don't hurry over, it will be too late. All the zombies will be killed by the soldiers." Chapter 110 Liujia Town. The bearded man was refueling the car over there, but Xia Bai and the others had already left. The bearded man was slightly stunned. A survivor next to him said strangely, "These people are moving too fast, and they don't even need any gas at this gas station." The bearded man rubbed his chin and was a little confused. After a moment, he said, "Maybe good people are awarded. I told him an important news, and he gave us this gas station. Everyone, hurry up and pretend. We must hurry up, because the military started attacking Liujia town at around 9 o'clock this morning, and it's already 12 o'clock now. If we delay, our trip will be in vain." On the other side, Xia Bai was driving a RV on the road. It's not that the oil at that gas station is not attractive, but there is really no place to store it. They had obtained a lot of chemical fuel when they were in Xiu City. Now the battleship has primary energy body as the core energy source. In this regard, there is nothing to worry about yet. Right now, energy points were the resource Xia Bai needed most. Originally, his plan was to stay in Xiu City until March or even April, completely upgrade the battleship to level 4 before leaving, but the situation changed. When Xia Bai left Xiu City, he only had 7,000 energy points in his hand. At first, there are still nearly 3,000 energy points needed to upgrade the 4th level battleship point, although the battleship's ability and speed to capture energy points has also improved since it reached level 3. If Xia Bai uses his own way to accumulate more than 5,000 energy points bit by bit, the time will undoubtedly be greatly lengthened. If he changes to another place, and this time the military's action, in Xia Bai's view, was an important opportunity to pick up the slack. Regardless of whether there are intelligent zombies in Liujia town, the 2 military battalions will definitely attract a large number of zombies to them when they clear the city. The military may use Xia Bai's method to divert zombies on a large scale and then carry out the direction of the guided bombing. But for zombies, the military is undoubtedly a lighthouse in the dark night. Even without the active guidance of intelligent zombies in the city will be attracted to them. Xia Bai started at this moment, and the zombies were dense. He didn't have to worry about taking on the pressure of the zombies in the city because of his actions. As long as the job was done properly, wouldn't it be possible to grab a lot of energy points? The location of Liujia town is actually not far from where Xia Bai and the others are. Chen Shai and Cheng, who was on the side, spread out the detailed national map obtained from Xiu City. After driving for a short time, he arrived at the location of Liujia town. Direction. This town is not large in size and has a small population, but perhaps because of this, most of the humans here have turned into zombies, and not many escaped in the early days of the apocalypse. Xia Bai first heard the news from a distance in the city. With the earth-shattering explosion heard in the air, Li Jingyang's drone rose from the battleship, overlooking the entire Liujia town. 2 military battalions entered Liujia town from 2 directions. One of them was trapped in a garden in Liujia town by a large number of zombies, while the other's advancement speed was also very slow, but it was still stable. As they advance, it can be seen that their destination is the same, a small residential area in the center of the city, which means that they have not yet succeeded in capturing intelligent zombies alive, and there are also obvious signs of death in some areas of the city. The traces of the bombing were filled with billowing smoke. Besides the army, there are the survivors. There are definitely many survivors who have the same mentality as the bearded man. From the pictures transmitted back, it can be clearly noticed that most of these people are now gathered around the outer circle of the city, or left behind by the military's advance. Above the zombie vacuum belt, Xia Bai's Black Hawk 13 only circled around once and then circled back. There was a mixed bag of military survivors here. If he encountered someone crazy and sought for shots from his drone, it would be over through the drone. Xia Bai determined a location to enter the city. He left the truck in a small forest outside the city and asked Hao Zuang, Bailan, Yang Xin and others to stay here with Yi Hanyu and the others. They had enough supplies. There is no point in going all into the city. Immediately afterwards, Xia Bai, Chen Qianqing and Li Jinggang drove a warship into the city from the northwest corner of the city. This direction was staggered by a certain distance from the military's advance route. There were not many survivors, and because of the conflict with the two directions, the military troops were advancing at a certain distance, so the zombies here began to act at this moment. Under the explosions and gunshots from far and near, they formed a torrent and moved towards the street. Along the street, the direction of the gunfire converged. Xia Bai entered the city along the driveway. The RV directly switched to the form of a battleship, but he did not take off. The military was carrying out military operations here at the moment. If his warship took off, it might attract endless attacks. He just wants to use the military's reputation in a low-key manner and earn energy points in a low-key manner. His battleship is amphibious on land, water, and air. After switching to the battleship form, it has more horsepower. It can even exceed the full speed of a sports car and speed above the ground streets. The overall shape is more like an enlarged version of the cold Batmobile. From the street as it passed by, the battleship's engine made a buzzing roar. Xia Bai, who was sitting on the weapons platform raised to the top of the battleship, turned the cannon directly and went straight to a crowded road, heading in the direction of the sound of military gunfire. The moving tide of corpses rushed towards me. Xia Bai even activated the local electromagnetic shield at the front of the battleship and roared along the street. Along the way, scrapped vehicles on the street were easily lifted open by Xia Bai's battleship, and the electromagnetic flash, accompanied by a loud noise, knocked into the sides of the street. Xia Bai, who was on the weapons operating platform, turned his gun at the same time and opened fire rapidly in the face of the swarm of zombies below. The zombie at the back was the first to follow the sound and turned its head. Facing the battleship that was charging like a tiger, it jumped high and killed it without hesitation. However, in just a moment, its body was killed by the battleship. The 30mm caliber bullets fired by the machine gun at high speed were ripped into blood in the air, and the next moment, the battleship was already flying close to the ground, with unimaginable momentum, colliding headlong into the tide of corpses. Densely packed, the bullets rained down, and in an instant, a shocking bloody storm was set off among the corpses. Of course, Xia Bai knew that the Black Hawk 13 had noticed the military's drone when it took off before. Now that he was firing here, it would definitely attract the attention of the military. But if the intelligent zombies were captured alive, the military with the troops sent by Fang are also limited, and it is impossible to stop Xia Bai's warships like this. After all, what he is doing now is to share the pressure for the military, and the military will not be idle to this point. Moreover, Xia Bai asked himself that no matter how irritating he was, the level 3 warships were not at the point where the military would be all over the place to block his warships that he wanted to recruit, so he was overthinking. Please support me, all you book lovers, please collect it. Please vote for recommendation. Chapter 111, Black Ghost. The ground has been covered with dark red plasma. Among the corpses everywhere, a zombie with a battered body is crawling at high speed on the ground. Even with only one hand left, it is still crawling at an incredible speed. Its target is very clear. It is a huge black metal body lying in the sea of blood and corpses over there, because at this moment, above the metal body, there is an extremely vivid living person emanating from it. With fatal temptation point it crawled at high speed and jumped up from the ground the moment it came directly under the metal body. As a zombie, even if only half of its body was left, it could lift itself with just one hand. The body was propped up and completed an impossible bouncing action. Because of such an action, the bones of its only remaining hand were broken, exposing the white bone stubble. But at this moment, Xia Bai, who was standing on the battleship, turned around and shot, hitting the head of this fearless thing. The bullet penetrated its head, and the impact it carried directly brought the body back and hit it heavily. On the ground, it stopped moving point at this moment. The entire street was in a mess, as if someone had washed the floor with blood. The entire street was covered with pieces of flesh and blood and sticky plasma, exuding the smell of blood and stench point just now. Xia Bai and his battleship ran over this street 3 times. Under the 30mm caliber machine guns, they fired so intensively that the crowd of corpses here just now, at this moment, everything turned into these pieces of flesh and blood point. The densely packed zombies on this street have captured nearly 200 energy points for Xia Bai. Of course, the zombies spawned by this alien virus are extremely fierce. Even so, there are still some among the plasma corpses everywhere. The zombies that were struggling to survive, still dragging their broken bodies, were ferociously launching a charge this waypoint. If these zombies were the kind of zombies similar to the T-virus, Xia Bai's speed of accumulating energy points would increase several times or even dozens of times. However, these zombies are extremely ferocious, not to mention the mobility of tigers and leopards. The power can even overturn a car. If it weren't for the fact that Xia Bai's battleship had reached the 3rd level of shield and could use it, he would probably be killing himself if he attacked a zombie wave of this size like this, even if he could successfully wipe out the entire neighborhood. Zombies, he himself can't even think about it. However, the situation in Liujia town is indeed different. If in Zhu City before, Xia Bai had dared to drive a battleship to spread hatred so unscrupulously, before the zombies in this street could be cleared, more zombies would continue to come from all directions came. But now, he had swept away all the zombies in this street, and there were only sporadic zombies coming from other places. When he saw Xia Bai standing on the battleship, he ran over like a cat that had picked up a mouse. But there were not many of them. Xia Bai kept the distance and shot one by one at the top of the battleship, and then quickly eliminated them. The reason why he came out of the battleship was to clean up the tiny zombies, and his Black Hawk 13, under the control of Li Jingyang, took off again to find where other zombies gathered nearby point. And even from Xia Bai's position, he could still clearly hear the sound of gunfire from the military not far away. This time they took action, and they were obviously fully prepared. Although only 2 battalions of troops came, the zombies they were extremely ferocious, but they remained undisturbed and were still moving forward steadily. Fighter planes even came to support from time to time in the sky and directly bombed the concentrated areas of zombies. Their purpose was to eliminate them, but they were not because of energy points like Xia Bai. And the level of every penny counts is like those who lost their arms and legs after being bombed. Unless they cause trouble to the military's progress, they will not care. Xia Bai turned his head and glanced. He could clearly see the thick smoke and flames caused by the explosion over there. I don't know what the military's plan is. With such an arrogant way of advancement, what if the intelligent zombie escapes? But this has nothing to do with Xia Bai. The military has its own plans. They must have their own reasons and certainty of results in doing so. Just because Xia Bai can't think of it, doesn't mean that others can't do it. Xia Bai rarely makes judgments, because he knows that some things are not right as you see them, and things that you think are wrong may not be really wrong. Many people are willing to curse people when they see it. Moreover, no matter what, the military's actions today can be said to have created good conditions for Xia Bai. The drone Black Hawk 13 quickly determined the location of the next zombie swarm. Xia Bai took the lead without hesitation. After taking a breath that mixed with the smell of blood and gunpowder smoke, he returned directly to the battleship. Start the battleship again and drive towards that location according to the picture fed back to the battleship by the drone point. That place is located on the edge of the city. A group of survivors attracted zombies. There were only a few of them, about 100 or so, and they were trapped in a low building that can be seen everywhere in such a small town. The zombies were crowded downstairs, and they couldn't help it. You know how to open the door to enter the building, but you are not helpless against the locked door. The zombies have piled up a human wall, and they are crowded one by one, and crawling up the wall, forming a mountain of corpses that continues to grow. Truly demonstrated what the power of unity means, which is an operation that no living person can do. The group of survivors had even retreated to the top of the building. There were 7 or 8 people with guns in their hands, and they were firing randomly. However, facing such zombies with amazing mobility and strength, they fell into the current situation. Death is almost certain. Those with poor psychological quality have even given up resistance and sat on the edge of the rooftop crying. Xia Bai was actually happy when he saw such a scene. Zombies were gathering together. This was the best situation for him. He directly mobilized the number 2 weapon platform and fired a shot towards the downstairs of the building. The whole earth seemed to be shaken. The mountain of corpses exploded and blood was thrown all over the sky. Xia Bai's battleship came from the billowing smoke. Under the stunned eyes of a group of survivors on the roof, divine soldiers descended from the sky and swept across the zombies downstairs. After sweeping them away, they turned directly and fiercely. The black battleship's body was covered with blood, and it sailed to the next area under the reflection of thick smoke and flames on the roof of the crumbling building. The desperate survivor looked at the back of the Xia Bai battleship in the distance and murmured, "Is that Batman's battle tank? Is the master here to save the world?" Another calmer survivor mused, "I seem to have heard of that existence. It is said that when the Bingcheng prison survivor base was breached, such a black technology fighter jet appeared and was blocked by the military. He defeated the corpse tied in the rear and rescued a large number of survivors. It seems to be an alien creature that is on the side of humans and is regarded as a black ghost by the survivors of the Ice City. Please collect it. Please vote for recommendation." Chapter 112 13 Kings. On February 5th, 2019, at dusk, the setting sun slanted down in the sky. Crimson light rolled across the sky. The heavy clouds all over the sky seemed to be burning, and the whole world exuded a palpitating meaning. In the direction of Liujia town, G province. The battle here is coming to an end. Thick smoke rises from every corner of the city. The new overlord zombies in the city suffered a devastating blow on this day. The 2 after the battalion arrived at the central location and completed its mission objectives, it began to eliminate zombies in the town in platoon units with the assistance of air fighters, and this process is much faster because before that, when they advanced into the city from 2 directions, they had defeated a large number of zombies, and there were many zombies outside Liujia town. Survivors. Although the military had ordered before the operation to prohibit survivors from appearing in this area, but now is the end of the world. Such requirements will not be implemented to a high degree, and the military will just turn a blind eye. Yes, it is a good thing that someone is recycling the peripheral materials in Liujia town. By the dusk of this moment, the entire military operation was almost coming to an end. Fang Wei, the battalion commander of the 172nd Division, was standing on a low building with half of it collapsed, looking into the distance. Under the military's prepared and planned attack, even if they only have less than 1,000 people. There are tens of thousands of zombies in this city. This is still a battle with great disparity in strength. It is only a matter of time to annihilate the zombies and the intelligent zombies that were boasted by the group of biological and genetic engineering scientists as having amazing learning abilities and intelligence quotients far exceeding that of normal humans have made no achievements in today's combat effectiveness and are completely passive in being beaten. Although the task of the troops led by Fang Wei was to clean up the perimeter and were not responsible for breaking in or capturing alive during the attack, he also saw the 2 intelligent zombies. One of the female individuals was captured alive, and the other was fearful, committed suicide. The zombie inserted a steel nail more than 10 centimeters long into his head. In Fang Wei's view, intelligent zombies can't even keep up with those ordinary zombies. At least ordinary zombies have the advantage of not fearing death. In his view, the Changbei Mountain Survivor Base has completely established itself. According to this, if the trend continues, it will not be a big problem to recover several important cities and start reconstruction within 2 years. The only problem right now is probably the sharp decline in population. The virus outbreak has already reduced a large number of people. Now zombies are killing people. People are killing people, and there are even people who died in accidents. The human population is decreasing sharply every day. In the future, population may be the key issue that prevents humans from reoccupying the earth. Fang Wei is a rough guy, but he can still think of this kind of problem. At this moment, Fang Wei, who was standing high up, suddenly noticed something unusual. Not only did he notice it, but a soldier next to him blurted out, "That's a black ghost, Fang." When he turned around like lightning and looked over there from his position, he saw a jet black battleship with a streamlined body skimming close to the ground. It was whizzing past a street not far away. The machine at the top of it was the cannon fired heavily, killing all the zombies in an instant. However, at this time, the zombies in the city had been basically wiped out. The fighter plane flew over the ground for a moment, then turned around with a fierce roar and flew from another place. The direction is out of Liujia town. Fang Wei's eyes have been fixed on this black aircraft. As for the existence of the other party, he has actually received information from his superiors. Although the apocalypse is now breaking out, the military and government's control over the situation has declined. But this time the encirclement and control of Liujia town was enough. Therefore, when the aircraft appeared, they already knew it, and the identity of the fighter plane had already been verified. A black ghost appeared during the retreat. There was even an order from above, if conditions permit, find a way to invite this group of people to the Changbai Mountain survivor base. Fang Wei hesitated slightly at this moment, and at this moment, a voice sounded behind him. "It's the black ghost of Ice City." From behind Fang Wei, a burly man walked up. He was not a member of the military, but he was extremely tall, nearly 2 meters tall, with muscles on his body. Even in this winter, he was only wearing a simple tactical vest, and his naked body was exposed. On his skin is a tattoo of a black dragon. No matter how strong a person is, he would not dare to expose his skin so casually when facing zombies. There are only one kind of people who dare to do this: the Awakener. This is Li Zipping, one of the 13 kings and a collaborator on Fang Wei's side of this operation. The joint operation of the military and civilian survivor organization seems a bit incredible, whether before or after the apocalypse, and this can also be seen in the energy of the 13 kings in the Changbai Mountain survivor base at this moment. Of course, the combat power of the top Awakener should not be underestimated. Although the people Li Zipping brought were basically useless, he himself was the strongest combat force. But Fang Wei had heard about the 13 kings a long time ago. It is said that these people are sometimes so bored that they go out to hunt innocent survivors. Even though Li Zipping brought a lot of doomsday to Fang Wei in order to build a good relationship, there are good things in it, but Fang Wei looks down on people from the bottom of his heart who can't even behave well in the apocalypse. Li Zipping stood next to Fang Wei, squinted at the black aircraft in the distance, and said, "Is that the legendary black ghost of the Ice City, Fang?" Wei glanced at him and said, "That's right, Li." Zipping asked, "Is that thing really driven by an alien creature, Fang?" "Wideo, are you kidding? They are survivors, armed survivors. It's a survivor." Li Zipping stared at the aircraft not far away that drove into the woods outside Liujia town and merged with a box truck. The light in his eyes seemed a bit dangerous. Fang Wei noticed something from this guy's tone and said, "I'm telling you, they are very dangerous, so don't." He couldn't finish what he said because at this moment, he suddenly heard some kind of strange noise. The sound was very strange, like the sound of ancient cavalry running on TV. At this moment, behind them, a soldier ran over and shouted, "Battle Commander, a new large group of zombies has appeared in the northwest. Our fighter jets have returned, and we are ordered to retreat immediately. Please collect and recommend. Thanks to Brown Glasses for the 10,000 rewards." The fourth helmsman of this book was born. There will be an update later. Chapter 113 Pigs. At the same time, Xia Bai also noticed the large group of zombies. The grove where Bailan and his truck were parked was located on a higher ground, overlooking the direction of Liujia town below. In fact, it was Chen Shai and Cheng who first noticed the abnormality. At that time, Xia Bai was overjoyed with his energy value. At the end of the day, he had used up a primary energy source, almost all the power in his solar battery, and had typed out an unknown amount. He fired bullets, but the harvest was quite fruitful. He went around the periphery of Xia town killing zombies for an entire afternoon, during which he also killed 2 extreme mutants. The military attracted zombies, and Xia Bai could even accurately complete the total annihilation style. After several kills, he obtained more than 2,700 ready-made energy points. Adding his original energy points, he now has nearly 10,000 energy points in his hand. Upgrading to level 4 is just around the corner. However, the military's battle was almost over, and the number of zombies in Xia town had already dropped sharply. Xia Bai was worried that he would be invited by the military to have tea, so he hurriedly evacuated while the military was finishing up, planning to run away. Xia Bai was here looking forward to the 4th level great battleship when he heard Shenshai and Sheng over there let out a scream. Xia Bai quickly cheered up and looked outside, but from his angle inside the battleship, he couldn't see anything clearly. Xia Bai also jumped off, stood on the top of the battleship that had switched back to the RV form, and set up with his sniper rifle. He used the scope of his sniper rifle to look towards Liu Jiasun. This glance didn't matter. Xia Bai's expression suddenly changed with just one glance. Even he had never seen such a scene in the 5 years of doomsday in his previous life. The large group of zombies that came were not ordinary zombies, but a group of zombie pigs. In the darkening sky, there are hundreds of zombie pigs, each weighing 300 to 400 kilograms. After turning into zombies, their bodies are swollen, but they run incredibly fast, dragging with such a heavy body. They were running faster than a car. They rushed directly from a fan position. There were at least 1,000 of them. As they ran, the whole earth seemed to be shaking. Like an ancient, it's like the heavy cavalry is launching a charge. Along with the appearance of this group of zombie pigs, another group of zombie pigs appeared on the other side, towards the hillside behind Xia Bai's grove, but their location was far away, and it was not clear yet. It is not surprising that a herd of zombie pigs of this size appears. Here, any large-scale breeding farm will have thousands of fat and strong pigs. Most of these pigs are healthy and are kept together. After the outbreak of the virus, it is extremely simple to turn all farms into zombies. However, most of these farms are far away from urban areas. The 2 groups of zombie pigs attracted here must be reinforcement for the moving in of intelligent zombies. They appeared at the moment when the military in Xia town was finishing its operations and the peripheral reconnaissance troops and fighter planes were withdrawing. They took advantage of the military's reduced control over the entire army in the apocalyptic environment and made a direct surprise attack. Despite this, as soon as the zombie pigs appeared, the direction of Xia town still took action. As soon as possible, the military personnel and survivors began to evacuate rapidly from the other direction. However, their speed varied, and the 4 zombie pigs' legs, the running speed is much higher than that of zombies, and the sprint of zombies is already fast enough. Now these zombie pigs are slaying them from the side. The large team of military and survivors will be attacked from the side in the blink of an eye. Impact. Xia Bai and the others couldn't stay long. A wave of zombie pigs was coming from behind. Although they were still far away, their truck was also moving slowly. Xia Bai only fired one shot from a distance on the roof of the car, hitting a zombie pig in the head. However, to Xia Bai's surprise, he killed a zombie pig and his energy points increased by 2 points. Although this thing is not an extreme mutant, the energy points it can contribute are far higher than ordinary zombies. Of course, this is also related to the size and amazing lethality of the zombie pig. The zombie transformation of this thing is simply a meat suit tank. If the military's armored forces are not prepared, they will be stunned if they hit it. Xia Bai's heart moved slightly. If a zombie pig is worth 2 energy points, and there are more than 2,000 zombie pigs in front of and behind him, he can save up to 10,000 energy points in one go by driving a battleship and killing a few times. The abundance. This was an opportunity to become a fat man in one breath. And Xia Bai had no reason not to be tempted. But this also means risks. His thoughts alone may put all of them at risk. The zombie pigs are unusual and their numbers are so large that they are not an easy existence for battleships to deal with. Everyone else was busy now, preparing to evacuate quickly, but Bailan noticed the hesitant Xia Bai here. Xia Bai didn't say much about battleship upgrades and energy points, but Bailan and the others could actually see that Xia Bai had a purpose and benefit from hunting zombies, and it was even closely related to the battleship. itself. She looked at Xia Bai, who was hesitating at this moment and seemed to realize something, so she walked up, pressed Xia Bai's hand with her hand, and said, "Go, you and Chen Shai and Chen go hunt these things. There are many people, so don't worry, we can join up with the military team. Although these things are powerful, they can't really overwhelm the military troops. As for people who drive, didn't I say that? I have a driver's license, and I have been practicing hard recently. It's time to put it to use. Leave it to me here." Regarding the battleship and Xia Bai's hunting of zombies, Balan and the others had actually already guessed something. But now, they have been in trouble for so long in the apocalypse. This is Xia Bai's secret. They are willing to respect it, unless Xia Bai wants to. If you tell them, they will never ask more questions. Xia Bai glanced at her, was silent for a moment, and nodded. And a moment later, they set off again, and divided into two groups. Balan and the others drove all the way from the grove towards the torrent of retreat of the military and survivors over there, while Xia Bai once again raised the battleship, and amidst the shouts of "May the military fortune be prosperous," under the completely darkened sky, they drove towards the zombie pigs in the distance, and the machine guns took the lead, in firing point on the other side, among the mixed team of military and survivors who had also arrived in the open area. Many people saw the dark warship here, and some people shouted excitedly, "That's the Black Ghost. The Black Ghost of the Ice City. That's actually true. Is it true or false? I've seen it in Liujia town a long time ago. It even competed with the military to kill zombies. That's how cruel it is." At this time, in the torrent of the convoy, Li Zipping, who was sitting on the Hummer, slowly shifted his eyes from the battleship that was fiercely killing the zombie pigs to the box truck that was also driving down from the direction of the grove, and patted it. The boy driving next to him said, "Let's go. Let's take someone over to intercept them." The younger brother was taken aback and said, "Boss, zombie pigs? What kind of zombie pigs are not zombie pigs?" Li Zipping sneered, his eyes flashing with some kind of greedy light. "If we can get that Black Ghost, do you think these zombie pigs can stop it? Stay with us." "What? A Black Ghost? Today, it is mine. Thank you for your continued support." Chapter 114, A God-Given Opportunity. The last ray of sunset in the sky was swallowed up by the boundless darkness. Xia Bai's black battleship seemed to be blending into the ghost of death in this darkness. Amidst the harsh roar, and driven by the anti-gravity engine, it fiercely tore the space apart, crossing the sky to meet the whistling coming from over there. Zombie swineherd. He has never seen a herd of zombie pigs of this size point, but they are also zombies, and their characteristics are surprisingly similar. Therefore, Xia Bai has his own hunting method. He lowers the battleship to a super low altitude position, and gets stuck in a position that is favorable for shooting, but will not cause the zombie pigs to pile up in a short time. At a height within reach of the stacked corpse mountain, they slowly rushed past directly above the group of zombie pigs that were roaring and charging from the distance point. The moment he approached the zombie pigs, Xia Bai asked Chen Shai and Cheng to slow down the battleship slightly. These zombies were different from humans, with their heads facing forward. If they were alive, it didn't matter whether they could run so fast. The heads of capable people should also be lowered with a sprint, but they have turned into zombies. All the characteristics of their bodies have already violated their biological characteristics. Now they are following the direction of the sound and the breath of living people, raising their heads high, holding his own head point. And this, for Xia Bai, who uses the operating system of the battleship's holographic night vision mode in the sky, is simply a living target, and the two of them are facing each other. These zombie pigs are like hitting his cannon. The firepower is the same, and the harvesting speed is incredible. As Xia Bai passed over their heads, the hum of the warship and the roar of the machine guns caused the large group of zombie pigs in this direction to turn their heads, to chase the warship that was moving fiercely through the sky. And Xia Bai, the moment Baize reaches the extreme end, he folds at high speed. In one round and round, he can kill hundreds of zombie pigs and grab nearly 1,000 energy points. However, although Xia Bai had already approached the zombie pig group, the zombie pig group was scattered and huge. There was still a large group charging towards the mixed retreat team of the military and survivors, while another group of zombie pigs came from behind. The group is gradually closing the distance between the military and the survivors without any hindrance. People eat pigs before the apocalypse, and pigs eat people after the apocalypse. This is also a great irony. Fang when he leaned out halfway from the military off-road vehicle and used his night vision binoculars to look at the approaching zombie pigs. He also felt his heart skip a beat. This thing could run faster than a tank. But he wasn't too nervous. He and another battalion commander had already made plans to change the phalanx with the tank and armored troops. There were nearly 2,000 military personnel and armed survivors here. He still didn't believe that they couldn't stop them. Thousands of pigs, they were going to retreat anyway, fighting and retreating at the same time, so escaping unharmed was never a problem. At this moment, Fang Wei suddenly noticed something unusual and said, "What happened to the survivors, master? Why did it come into our car formation?" Below, the correspondent who had been responsible for communicating with another battalion commander and the command center said, Battle Commander Chen said that they are from the Mutual Rescue Association and that they have urgent information to report. Fang Wei frowned slightly, vaguely feeling that something was not quite right. At this moment, Li Ziping was also looking at the zombie pigs, but what he was looking at was the black ghost that was crisscrossing back and forth in the distance. In the dim light of the sky, that thing was like a god who dominated the killing overcome. And the more this happened, the more possessive he felt in his heart. In his opinion, now is simply the opportunity given to him by God. The survivors in the battleship are divided into two groups, and there are zombie pigs running and roaring outside, making the scene chaotic. The military can't control him, and the black ghost turns around at least once 3 to 5 minutes. He used the chaos to seize the box truck on one side of the battleship and use this to force the battleship to surround Wei and rescue Zhao, using the advantages he had learned to capture the battleship together. At this moment, the corner of Li Ziping's mouth slowly raised a piercing sneer. Anyway, the black ghost will be wasted in the hands of you garbage survivors. Rather than being snatched away by others in the future, why not give it to me? When Xia Bai's battleship turned back again and fiercely moved towards the far end, Li Ziping and his 13 Kings convoy, who quietly retreated from the front of the entire fleeing team, quietly took action. As for what the internal fighting will bring to the military and other survivors at this moment, what does it have to do with them? Li Ziping thought to himself, as long as the battleship is obtained, can these zombie pigs stop him? Baolan's car had already merged into the retreating torrent and was at the very back of the entire convoy. At this time, the military was setting up armored lines on the flanks. While advancing and firing, it was also preparing to withstand the incoming attacks. The first wave of zombie pigs, although Baolan volunteered to drive, in fact, it was Zi Hanyu who actually drove. This guy is indeed the eldest sister. He is a mess. He was seriously injured yesterday, and it was difficult to walk. However, she drove this medium-sized box truck quite smoothly. According to her, she followed her uncle when she was a child. I lived in the countryside and drove a tractor when I was a teenager. Later, when I was the eldest daughter of Chengaiyu Middle School, it was common for me to race cars in Zhu City at night without a license and be invited to drink tea and so on. I never imagined that this would happen and the end of the world became a good skill. Everyone broke into a cold sweat after hearing this, but Baolan quite likes this girl. In this era, when faced with danger, capable and incompetent people like to retreat. This kind of person who takes the initiative to take the lead is still popular after all. It was just Baolan and the others who were crowded. Xia Bai specially found this car with 4 seats. Although it seemed crowded, he couldn't care about so much at the moment. However, Baolan was not idle either. He retreated from the front driver's seat to the back and began to collect the equipment in the car. Although the zombie pigs were coming, the military and Xia Bai were there to support them, but if 1 or 2 of them rushed in the car formation of survivors, they always have to prepare early. But the people in the car were crowded, and there was no place to put weapons. They didn't have many things in their hands, only small weapons and grenades. Hao Zuan, who was squeezed into the back row with Baolan, Yang Xin and Yu Zhaoqi, expressed his dissatisfaction. Why don't I, a fat and strong guy like me, sit in the passenger seat and let that girl Chen Yingying do it? Chen Yingying, well, sorry. At this moment, Baolan who had been paying attention to both sides, suddenly saw a BMW next to her, suddenly hitting them from the side at high speed. Her face suddenly changed, and she shouted, "Be careful." At the same moment, something happened in the military camp of the high-speed convoy in front. Suddenly there was a loud noise, a huge explosion occurred, and flames rose in the dark night. The convoy was suddenly in chaos. Lee Zipping, who was about to double-team Balan and the others, was also stunned for a while, but instead of being surprised, he was delighted. Wasn't this kind of chaos a God-given opportunity for what he wanted to do? Brothers who are passing by, don't forget to vote, and add it to your favorites also. Thanks to Lee's generous reward, the fifth helmsman of this book was born. Thank you all for your continued support. Thank you. I guarantee that everyone can like what I write, but I will definitely try my best to prevent everyone's support from being in vain. I will continue to add more tonight. Chapter 115, The Top Awakener. An earth-shaking explosion erupted at the front end of the 2,000-man convoy that stretched to nearly 100 meters. The originally orderly convoy suddenly became chaotic. Along with the howling of zombie pigs getting closer and closer, it added a layer of darkness to the night. Shock and horror, but despite this, the convoy is still moving forward. The armored array at the front is slightly chaotic, and some survivors in the middle section even crashed into the car. However, this is already nearly half a year after the end of the world. Most of those who dare to come here to follow the military to pick up the missing ones. They are all experienced and capable old survivors. The zombie pigs are on the side. No matter what happens, they will not stop and continue to move forward. Point behind them, Lee Zipping and Balan had a direct conflict, and they had no intention of exploring the situation ahead. Point Yihan Ayu's psychological quality was sufficient. Balan's reminder and the sound of the explosion were mixed together. Chen Yingying, who was sitting next to her in the passenger seat, was trembling with fright. However, she was extremely calm. She suddenly slammed into the BMW at the moment she collided with it. Turning the steering wheel to speed up, she forced the car out of the way. She turned sharply at high speed. However, she just passed the car when she saw a man in a red cotton padded jacket sitting on the car in front of him. The man directly set up a machine gun and fired directly at their truck. The other person opened fire and hit not the truck, but the front hood and wheels of the truck. Yihan Ayu's expression changed suddenly, and she once again changed direction and planned to get out of the way of the car. However, vehicles from both sides of their vehicle surrounded them, sandwiching them in the middle. Outside the motorcade that was outflanking them, the Hummer Lee Zipping was riding in came up from the other side. The man leaned out half of his body and sneered unscrupulously, "Brother, driving is very troublesome. Why don't you stop and let me give you a ride?" As he spoke, he turned his head and glanced ahead. He didn't know what was going on in front of him. There were even gunshots and continuous explosions. The convoy was in chaos. Many people were affected by the sudden outbreak of fighting in the convoy. A mess. Seeing this, the smile on Lee Zipping's lips became even thicker. The more chaotic the better. It would be better to have more explosions, so that the black ghost over there can't tell what happened here. Of course, he was overthinking this in the apocalypse. Xia Bai's most important thing is communication. Balan directly put the walkie-talkie into Yang Xin's hand. The other party was obviously prepared, and there were not many weapons in the truck. She was not an arrogant person and wanted to solve all this by herself, so she asked Yang Xin to contact the battleship immediately. Balan herself threw a grenade directly from the car window. She had specially practiced throwing it in Zoo City some time ago. The physique of the awakened person was also enhanced. She was still stable while driving side by side at high speed. He steadily threw the grenade into a car below and exploded instantly. In an instant, the off-road vehicle on their side turned into a big flaming train and its speed suddenly slowed down. At the same moment, Yihan Ayu turned the steering wheel hard and took the opportunity to rush out of the double team area and get halfway out of the way. Get on the front of the machine gun and try to break out of this double team formation. However, at this moment, Lee Zipping, who was sitting on the Hummer on one side, pushed open the door, jumped between the two cars driving side by side at high speed, and jumped directly into Balan's car. There was a muffled sound on the car wall, and the whole car shook. Yang Xin changed his face. This is the awakened one, as if in response to her words, the car door on Hao Zhuang's side suddenly twisted and then was violently torn out by Li Ziping's arrogant and terrifying force from the outside. The whole car was shocked. This awakened person was incredibly strong. Hao Zhuang had quick eyes and quick hands. He immediately raised the spray gun in his hand and sprayed it in the cramped car. However, Li Ziping seemed to have expected this scene and directly used the door that he had torn down as a shield. People rushed inside the car. I asked you to stop the car and I came to give you a ride. Why did you misunderstand my kindness so much? How? Zhuang wanted to push forward, but Beilan pulled him back hastily. In just a moment, Beilan realized that he must not let the other party get in the car. In such a small car, the other party had an overwhelming advantage. With the help of several cars outside, it would be easy to force them to stop. The truck was advancing rapidly. The gunshots outside were deafening. The wind poured in from the torn door. Beilan's black hair was dancing wildly. In the chaotic and crowded carriage, she pressed down on Hao Zhuang and faced it by herself. The powerful awakened person who burst in from the outside said at the same time, "Yi Hanyu, leave me alone and drive forward." She pressed Hao Zhuang's body forward to use her strength and pounced heavily on the awakened person in front of her. At the last moment when she pounced, Yu Zhaoqi, who was tightly held by Yang Zhen in the corner, stretched out her hand and tried to hold on for dear life. He grabbed Beilan's hand, as if trying to keep her, but Beilan's strength was amazing. Yu Zhaoqi was just a child and couldn't do anything at all. The next moment, Beilan had already jumped out of the car, and she was the awakened ones may not be as powerful as Li Ziping, who is known as the 13 Kings, but their explosive power at such a short distance is also amazing. And Li Ziping never expected that this group of people are not only the owners of the Black Ghost, but also some of them. There was an awakened person, and Beilan took him out of the speeding car on the spot, rolling and landing on the ground. The Hummer behind stopped. Li Ziping stood up from the ground with his face covered in blood. He glanced at the Hummer and roared, "Hurry up and chase that car, and these people are what we need to get the battleship." As soon as he finished speaking, Beilan rushed up from behind, grabbed Li Ziping's hand, and knocked him to the ground. Beilan's face was covered with blood and her hair was disheveled. She drew her gun in an instant, but she didn't shoot at Li Ziping, but planned to fire in the direction of the Humvee over there. She wanted to stop this group of people. However, Li Ziping's strength was already superior to hers, and he was used to being brave and fierce. Now he reacted in an instant. He raised his hand and punched Beilan in the belly. It was incredibly powerful. With the fist coming down, Beilan's expression suddenly changed. Li Ziping's power is far superior to hers. However, Beilan hit Li Ziping on the head without hesitation. But the Hummer over there didn't move, because right in front, the truck suddenly braked and stopped more than 20 meters away. Yi Hanyu, who was driving, threw the walkie-talkie in the hand of Hao Zhuang behind him and said, "Call Xia Bai and the others to come back. You all just stay in the car and don't move." As she said that, she picked up the fire axe herself, pushed open the car door, jumped out of the car, and pushed Chen Yingying back, who was extremely nervous and wanted to follow her out. She spat on the ground and saw people still talking with each other over there. Li Ziping, who was struggling with Beilan, rushed forward while dragging his lame leg. The veins on his pale and delicate face were exposed, making him look a bit ferocious and furious. She shouted directly, "I'm going to fuck you." There will be another chapter later. I noticed that some book friends complained about Li Ziping's IQ. But from the perspective of me as the author's designer, he himself is not completely brainless. He just does what he does. He relies on his top awakener with the strength and the expansion of the background of the 13 Kings. It is still considered prudent to start from Beilan's side to obtain the protagonist's battleship and first calculate the time when the battleship discovers the abnormal turn back. This is nothing more than greed and intensification. As a 13 King and a top awakened person, I'm just unscrupulous. Such people are actually everywhere in our lives. I do have some ability and will be unscrupulous. Unless one day I hit my head and bleed, I will never look back. In fact, it is still the same sentence. Who does what at what time? Smart people, fools, honest people, careerists, etc. are the various states in the apocalypse. What kind of personality and psychology can determine what a person can say, do, or even accomplish one thing? Where point although herbal tea may not be perfect, what I can guarantee is that I have intentions for every character who appears, and I will consider their personality, psychology, work style, and shortcomings as thoroughly as possible. I hope everyone can understand and support me. There are a lot of them, so I just want to explain them briefly. Well, the most important thing is that there will be a chapter later. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 116 Secondary Biological Enhancement Injection. Chapter 117 Secondary Bio-Enhancement Injection. The sky was dark, with no stars or moon in the sky. The retreating convoy of the military and other survivors was getting farther and farther away, and the light of the car lights gradually faded away. Instead, it became dark here, but from the to there was a wave of corpses composed of zombie pigs coming from all directions, and the ground was shaking. Although most of the zombie pigs coming from the flanks were intercepted and killed, the forwards who were not afraid of death were almost at the front of the vehicle formation, and were about to launch a charge with the armored front, and the front of the convoy did not know what was coming. What's the situation? The military's response at this moment was surprisingly dull and even appeared to be fighting on their own amid chaos, but behind the entire convoy, all the cars here stopped. Lee Zipping didn't expect that there was an awakened person in this car, and although this awakened woman was not as powerful as Lee Zipping, she had an endless variety of small weapons on her body, and she also knew fighting skills, even if Lee Zipping was against the same person. The Awakener's Balan has an absolute crushing advantage, but it is still difficult to subdue someone instantly. And right over there, Yi Hanai was rushing over. Although it looked like she was stupidly holding a fire axe to fight, in fact, her other hand had been hidden behind her, using the darkness to squeeze her tightly. She was holding a pistol. She had never fired a gun before, and her marksmanship was not accurate, so she planned to close the distance before firing to ensure a hit. Yi Hanai was also very anxious, because as she stopped, the other party also stopped the car. At this time, Hao Zhuang and the others had even exchanged fire with the 13 King's people, but the people on Lee Zipping's side were well prepared. There are many people and strong firepower. Hao Zhuang and the others barely fought back, but they were still suppressed in the carriage. The time they could buy for Yi Hanai was limited. He couldn't finish what he said, because at this moment, a sharp roar sounded in the field, as if the space was torn apart, and a terrifying wind rolled up, as if a terrifying storm suddenly came. That was Xia Bai's battleship, which came to the field. Fortunately for the awakened ones like Lee Zipping, the body of the younger brother who got off the Humvee from behind was flipped to the ground. The battleship's lights were turned on, illuminating the field brightly in an instant. Lee Zipping's heart sank slightly. Why did this black ghost come back so quickly? In fact, Lee Zipping's previous estimate of the time it took for the warship to return, and the fact that he failed to notice the state behind it when the warship flew forward was really overthinking. Not to mention anything else, Xia Bai's weapon platforms are all 360-degree holographic. He can clearly see everything in the sky, in the front, behind, left, right, and right. Coupled with the night vision function, the night is brighter in Xia Bai's eyes than the day, and it appears the war auxiliary system of the high heat explosive battleship will also remind Xia Bai immediately. Therefore, before Balan and the others called Xia Bai already knew that something was wrong here. First time turned around and returned. These are things that Lee Zipping couldn't have imagined, even if he thought about it, but this top level awakened person also knows that if this thing's machine cannon sweeps across, even if he is a powerful top level awakened person, he will be beaten into blood and mud in an instant, without any flesh and blood live. Therefore, at this moment, instead of retreating, he continued to move forward, stopping Balan who was trying to escape quickly due to the arrival of the battleship. As long as he restrained the awakened woman in front of him, he would still have a chance to counterattack. Among the battleships, Chen Shai and Qing had already begun to broadcast to the entire audience. Everyone, Put down your weapons immediately, or you will die immediately. With the battleship's intimidation here, Li Ziping's younger brothers had no shield. They all looked at each other and honestly stopped firing point. But inside the battleship, Chen Qianqing and Li Jinggang were not as relaxed as they seemed. They were both very nervous. Looking at Bai Lan, who was obviously at a disadvantage, they didn't know what to do point at this moment. Chen Qianqing, who was sitting in the driver's seat in front, suddenly heard a strange noise. He turned around and found that it was Xia Bai who had come up from the weapons console. Open the hatch, let me down, I have a way. Chen Qianqing watched Xia Bai walking towards the rear hatch. He took off his coat and rolled up his sleeves and injected a red injection without hesitation. He was a little dazed. He didn't react until Xia Bai shouted a second time. He couldn't bear it. The resident said, "This is nearly 10 meters from the ground. Open the door." Xia Bai's voice was calm. Chen Qianqing took a deep breath and opened the battleship's hatch. In fact, Xia Bai could open the door directly through the system and his identity as captain. But at this moment, he actually had something to say. "I'll pull them apart later. If I can beat him, don't do it. Move. If I can't beat him, you can find an opportunity to open fire and kill him directly for me." Xia Bai actually knew Li Ziping. In his previous life, he had met this top awakened person among the 13 kings. Although the awakened beings spawned by this alien virus will not have any unreasonable and exaggerated abilities such as controlling fire and thunder, the awakened beings also have different strengths and weaknesses. Those who are particularly weak will be as strong as beads. The little zombie boy in his city is almost the same, and awakened ones like Bai Lan and Yi Hanyu are all possessors of conventional strength, and above them are the top beings among the awakened ones, such as the 13th king Li's awakened people like Bing. These top level awakened people can be seen from their appearance. While they possess powerful power, their bodies are also distorted, such as this burly and outrageous figure and overdeveloped muscles. These are all the external characteristics of this top-level awakened person. What Xia Bai just injected was a secondary bio-enhancement injection. The use of this thing was indeed forced by the situation, and secondly, he really wanted to try the power of this potion. So, he asked Chen Qianqing to take action again when he couldn't defeat him. The moment Xia Bai was injected with this thing, he clearly felt it. At that moment, his body became hot, and a surging sense of power rose from his heart. This potion improves all aspects: strength, physical strength, reaction ability, speed, etc. Xia Bai couldn't help but clenched his fists. As the battleship's hatch opened, he jumped directly from a height of nearly 10 meters, like a cannonball hitting the ground heavily. Over there, Yi Hanyu, who was dragging his lame leg towards Bai Lan and Li Ziping, was slightly stunned. She looked at Xia Bai, who was standing upright and falling like a cannonball, and couldn't help but be stunned. "Is this guy also an awakened person?" Xia Bai glanced at her and said, "You are weak. Please get back to the car." This chapter has a huge title. Dear book lovers, please support me. Chapter 117. 3 Awakeners. Yi Hanyu stood still not far away, neither retreating nor moving. The ground was trembling slightly, which meant that the zombie pigs coming from 2 directions were getting closer and closer. Xia Bai got off the battleship and lost the view provided by the battleship. At this moment, it is difficult to judge how close the zombie pigs are. Moreover, the military does not know what trouble is going on, and the military may not be able to care about it. The big picture point therefore, Xia Bai must deal with this top awakener of the 13 kings as soon as possible, and then take off again before being swallowed by zombie pigs here. After calling Yi Hanyu over there, he rushed directly towards Li Ziping and Bai Lan, who were still fighting over their. Li Ziping had actually noticed Xia Bai a long time ago. When he saw the other party's momentum, he realized that this was also an awakened person. There are less than 10 people in this group, but there are actually 2 awakened ones, of course. This is before Yi Hanyu takes action. Xia Bai didn't hesitate at this moment and rushed over directly. Although Xia Bai was a little confused after taking the medicine, he was actually very cautious in his heart. Xia Bai knew the strength of the top awakeners, but his medicine had never been actually practiced. He didn't know how many sharp. Therefore, Xia Bai secretly held a small pistol, Preparing for a close quarters gunfight. Xia Bai didn't intend to follow the rules, but Li Ziping noticed that Xia Bai had a gun in his hand. As soon as Xia Bai came over, he pressed Xia Bai's hand. First point in Li Ziping's view, even if Xia Bai is an awakened person, from the perspective of body shape, he is an ordinary awakened person. The power of a single body can never be compared with him, a top awakened person, so he is suddenly in a position of power. He must win. If nothing else, he must knock the gun out of Xia Bai's hand. However, what Li Ziping never expected was, when he pressed down his hand, he was locked in a fight with Xia Bai. The two of them were balancing their hands at the height of Xia Bai's waist. Xia Bai couldn't even think of lifting his hand. But Li Ziping failed to knock Xia Bai's gun away as he wished. Li Ziping was slightly surprised, but Bailan was on the side. He had no time to hesitate and missed. Then he raised another fist and threw it at Xia Bai with all his strength. Xia Bai was slightly surprised. The opponent's punch was incredibly fast, even far beyond the limit of human beings. Before injecting the medicine, Xia Bai would not even be able to see clearly before his head would be smashed by the opponent's punch. However, at this moment, Xia Bai instinctively raised his hand to block. Immediately afterwards, there was a heavy muffled sound of flesh and blood hitting the space. Li Ziping's pupils suddenly dilated. Because under his gaze, he was carrying a punch that was powerful enough to break a boulder, but Xia Bai simply blocked it with one hand. No matter how hard he tried, the opponent's punch was blocked. Like a mountain, my fist was unable to move even half a step forward. At this moment, the emotions in Li Ziping's heart were indescribable. Such an ordinary looking young man doesn't even have any external aberrations, but his strength is no different from that of a top awakened person like him. Are you kidding me? Xia Bai himself was stunned for a moment. His palms were burning, but he did block this blow that even he didn't think he could block, and it felt like the opponent's strength seemed to be average. Li Ziping was in huge shock, but Xia Bai was not. In just these 2 rounds, the power of the genetic medicine produced by the battleship has been reflected. Although Xia Bai began to worry about the exaggerated side effects of such a powerful genetic medicine, but now he is fighting at this moment. Li Ziping's 2 attacks were all blocked by Xia Bai, and he was momentarily lost in shock. This was the best time for Xia Bai to counterattack. Xia Bai directly raised his foot, lifted his vaginal leg, and kicked Li Ziping in the crotch. Are you kidding me? There's no point in using life-threatening hand-to-hand combat, inserting eyes into your eyes, and teasing your vaginal legs, as long as you get the chance. Xia Bai's current strength is equivalent to that of a top-level awakened person. With this kick, the shocked look on Li Ziping's face collapsed and instantly turned into a kind of livid color. He opened his mouth to scream, but nothing came out, and his hands came up. The power suddenly weakened, and Xia Bai used this to exert his strength, directly flying the top awakened person from the 13 Kings 5 or 6 meters away, and smashed it heavily on the ground. Bailan, who had just rushed over to help, never expected that the instant confrontation between Xia Bai and Li Ziping would have such an outcome. Bailan had just been fighting with Li Ziping for nearly 2 minutes. He was very clear about the strength of this awakened person. It was a first-class experience. Bailan was also an awakened person. When facing Li Ziping, he felt a completely crushing power gap. If she hadn't practiced with Xia Bai for a period of time with the veteran sent by Yikizi before, she might have been knocked down by the other party as soon as they met. However, now this top awakened person was knocked down by Xia Bai in just one encounter. Xia Bai, when did he become an awakened person? The contrast between before and after was so great that Bailan couldn't help but be stunned. But over there, Yi Hanyu reacted quickly. When she saw that Li Ziping was finally separated from everyone, she threw out the fire axe in her hand and hit Li Ziping heavily here. Although Li Ziping was hit in a vital point, he was still a top level awakener. At this moment, he had taken a breath and responded to Yi Hanyu's axe instantly, raising his hand to catch it. He had just been kicked half to death by Xia Bai. His whole body was limp. Moreover, he noticed that Yi Hanyu could not walk steadily. He saw the flying fire axe and did not use much force on his hands. Relying on the fact that he is an awakened person, he plans to directly use this axe as a weapon and find a way to counterattack an army. However, Li Ziping miscalculated again. His hand firmly grasped the axe handle, but he miscalculated the force coming from the axe head point. The force of the throw by the delicate little girl who couldn't figure out how to walk was actually greater than that of a strong adult. He pinched the handle of the fire axe, but was unable to contain the momentum of the axe. Stunned, he moved forward and slashed into his shoulder with the force of cracking a mountain and cracking rocks. In an instant, blood gushed out. In just a moment, Li Zipping realized that that delicate little girl who could hardly walk unsteadily was also an awakener. Li Zipping did not scream. His eyes passed over Yi Hanyu, Bailan and Xia Bai one by one. His eyes were mixed with a cold light of hatred and madness, and there was also a glimmer of disbelief and regret. The other party has less than 10 people in total, but he actually has 3 awakened ones. What kind of survivor team is this? There are not only black ghosts, but also 3 awakened ones. Who the hell can beat this? Please collect it. Please vote for recommendation. Asking for all kinds of support. Chapter 118. Li Zipping is very depressed. Li Zipping felt cold in his heart. 3 Awakeners, a battleship with heavy firepower, the strength of the top Awakeners, that he was proud of, and his plan to capture Bailan and others in an instant, and then seize the battleship, instantly came to nothing. He had previously thought of capturing people alive as threats, and weapons like RPGs were useless, but now, he thought to himself that he might as well just shoot all the people in the truck to death from the beginning. Li Zipping had seen the strength of the battleship before when he was in Liujia town and knew that this thing was extremely powerful, but he himself was also a top awakener after all. Logically speaking, the people inside such high-tech equipment are often single-body weaklings. He only needs to find the right time to take action and take advantage of Bailan's weakness in terms of battleships, and then supplement it with the strength of his top awakener power when the time comes. Even if the people in the battleship don't care about the life and death of the people in the car, this is the end of the world, and it is impossible to lose supplies. This method will definitely be used to complete this plunder, but the situation far exceeded his imagination. There were actually 2 awakened ones in the small medium-sized truck. On the battleship, there was even a top awakened person whose strength was comparable to his. The opponent is not only extremely powerful in terms of technological force, but also crushes them at the level of awakened beings that Li Zipping is proud of. There are less than 10 people in total, but there is 1 black ghost and 3 awakened people. One of these 3 awakened people is even a top awakened person that is rare among awakened people. There are almost no shortcomings. Even Lion Junfang may not be able to form any luxurious team. Is this a level up team that meets the legendary protagonist in the end of the world? But at this moment, Li Zipping had lost his fighting spirit. Facing such a group of people, there was no possibility of victory. He had to create his own opportunity, bite back and run away immediately. At this moment, Hao Zhuang also got out of the car and pointed his gun at Li Zipping's younger brothers. However, Li Zipping was not willing to give in. He gritted his teeth and shouted, "You have put down your guns. Are you waiting to die?" Following this shout, the boy who got off the Humvee at the back was stunned for a moment, glanced at the warships eyeing the sky, gritted his teeth, and lowered his body, as if to pick up the gun on the ground. And at this moment, Yi Hanyu over there opened fire. She took out the gun she had hidden for a long time, and fired 3 shots from a long distance. Her shooting skills were too bad, and she missed even 1 shot, but the younger brother didn't think so. Many people thought that Ji Hanyu was trying to frighten him, and hit him on the ground deliberately. Everything that just happened, Li Zipping's younger brothers all saw it. The other part is 3 awakened people plus a powerful battleship. Everyone was scared at this moment. Of course, Li Zipping's younger brothers were all too. A murderer, but he is more fierce than me. The machine gun fires down, and even the arms and legs are broken off. Who dares to move? This little brother had gained some courage, but now he was forced back by Yi Hanyu's 3 shots. Li Zipping roared angrily, "Believe it or not, I will peel off your skin like that bitch before." However, his intimidation had no effect. The younger man's face changed, but he remained motionless, his eyes moving around, obviously trying to find an opportunity to run away on his own. Li Zipping's face was extremely ugly. He struggled to get up and planned to rush towards the Hummer. He planned to use the RPG on the car to shoot casually and take advantage of the chaos to escape. However, Baolan, who had just picked up the gun from the ground, opened fire in an instant. Baolan's shooting skills were still very accurate. He hit Li Ziping's leg with 4 consecutive shots. Even the awakened one fell down heavily. Li Ziping was crawling back, his eyes filled with fear and cruelty. He stared at Baolan, who was walking towards him with a gun in his hand, and hissed, "Have you ever heard of the 13 Kings of Changbei Mountain? We are the strongest survivor force in the Changbei Mountain survivor base. I'm the leader of the 13 Kings, the top awakener. Killing me is not like killing those ordinary survivors. I died today. You are in the entire G province. No, the 3 eastern provinces will be unable to move forward. The 13 Kings were originally just a local survivor force in G province, but they expanded rapidly after the Changbei Mountain survivor base was established. They are indeed very powerful in the G province area, especially in the current expansion period of living people. He claims to have great influence on the east, although it is alarmist to say that the 3 provinces have control in Kyrgyzstan. This is indeed an incredible force. Baolan stood still about 2 meters away from him. Li Ziping seemed to have realized something, and he hissed, "We can cooperate. It's the end of the world now, and only interests and strength are king. If you cooperate with our 13 kings, in the future, let alone the 3 eastern provinces, the whole of China is ours. We are not as simple as you think. We have great power and background in the Changbei Mountain survivor base." As he said these words, his body was still moving back a little bit, as if he was still thinking of some other ideas. This is a greedy and aggressive person. Xia Bai, who was not far away, glanced here, but he didn't say anything. Even if he cooperated, he couldn't cooperate with people like the 13 Kings, but he didn't act anymore, but watched this scene silently. As long as if Li Ziping made any move, he would take action as soon as possible. Yi Hanai on the other side retreated to the car behind again. Although she was careless, she could also see that the situation in the field had been completely reversed. Not only did Xia Bai crush the entire field with the absolute violence of the battleship, but he himself also crushed the people who were just unstoppable at the level of the awakened ones. It would be strange if Li Ziping could still cause trouble in his lifetime. Most of Li Ziping's younger brothers were silent, and many of them had even begun to retreat quietly. Anyway, the night was dark, and now everyone's eyes were focused on their position in the field. There were zombie pigs roaring in the distance. No one will notice them. There are very few of these people who are truly loyal. They are all just people who follow the wind and follow the 13 Kings because they can do whatever they want without restraint in the last days. With the momentum of the 13 Kings, they are arrogant and domineering. But if something happens to the 13 Kings, most of them will run faster than a rabbit. In a sense, the system of the 13 Kings is actually extremely deformed and can only exist in this apocalyptic environment. Li Ziping obviously knew this, and he didn't really have any expectations for his younger brothers. He knew who he was, and he also knew what the people he had recruited were. Therefore, except for the initial try, he no longer tried to ask for help from his little brothers, but he kept mentioning the 13 Kings and cooperation in an attempt to distract the attention of the people in front of him. And at this moment, gunfire rang out in the field. It was Baolan who fired. Please support me. There will be an additional chapter later. Chapter 119 in Chaos. Baolan looked at Li Ziping and actually had a panoramic view of this man's thoughts and ideas. If it were before the end of the world, she really wouldn't know what to do when faced with such a situation. If you mess with such a person, a little girl like her will of course be afraid of retaliation. Sometimes, even calling the police is pointless, but at this moment, she just raised her gun from a distance of more than 2 meters and shot directly to kill Li Ziping, who had been chattering. Until the moment of death, Li Ziping didn't seem to have thought that Baolan would shoot so unscrupulously. At the moment of death, there was still that kind of prepared greed on his face. He had clearly said everything. The 13 Kings were so powerful and unyielding. How could the other party dare to kill him so unscrupulously? Before and after the apocalypse, Li Ziping was the kind of person who was used to running wild. Whenever he encountered trouble, it was nothing more than a civil settlement. No matter how tough he was, his boss would handle it and check and balance it. But it is a pity that he met him today. The only ones who are more unscrupulous than him are Xia Bai. Xia Bai's acting style has always been simple. He always talks to people who can reason. If he meets someone who is unreasonable, he will be even more unreasonable than others. Over such a long time, Bailan and others have also been influenced by him to some extent. Impact point: if it were before the end of the world, Bailan might have been a fearful ordinary person who was bullied and didn't dare to speak out. But times have changed, and the world has changed. In the current world, weakness does not allow people to survive. On the other side, Yi Hanai was also restarting their car. Although the car was riddled with bullets, it was still usable. At this moment, Yi Hanai was restarting it. Xia Bai was also walking towards the battleship again. Bailan nodded at him and walked towards the box truck on the other side. Soon, everyone returned to their positions again and began to take action. The box truck began to slowly turn, intending to leave the place at high speed from the other side, and Xia Bai boarded the battleship and opened fire. Those younger brothers did not resist at all, turned around and ran away, not trying to beat Xia Bai hard, but just hoping to outrun his companions. Xia Bai didn't care about this. What he killed today was a top awakener among the 13 kings. It was impossible to hide it. It didn't matter whether these grassroots were alive or dead. Even if they could escape, I'm afraid they will also die among the pigs that are following closely behind them. It was enough for Xia Bai to kill most of them. The zombie swine herd was about to roar in, and the convoy in front didn't know what kind of chaos was going on. He didn't have time to waste on one or two scattered minions in the weapon operating platform of the battleship. Xia Bai could clearly see that on one side of the mixed convoy of military and survivors, the zombie pigs were finally roaring towards them. Under the darkness of the night, in the swaying firelight from far and near, these huge zombie pigs swept from the end of the earth like a mountain of flesh and finally ran into the car array of living people. At this moment, the outer tank array deployed by the military to intercept the zombie swine herds was completely destroyed due to internal chaos and the failure to form a defense and attack array in time. Moreover, the zombie pigs are so powerful that they come with unparalleled momentum. The tanks that can collide with each other are dazzled, and the entire body is deflected. The urgently fired tank guns even miss and bombard the survivors on one side. In the convoy, there were large amounts of flames and explosions. However, the military has a large number of people and a clear division of labor from superior to subordinate. Although there are faults in some places, it still has its own response. The military's tanks and armored vehicles are regrouping to build an interception defense line. The convoy of survivors that originally seemed to be retreating with the military accelerated at this time, rushing out of the chaotic field in a straight line, crushing the dead bodies and flames everywhere, and watching in horror the zombie pigs. Passing by him, he flew away from the military convoy and the zombie swarm, and accelerated to withdraw from the field. Tanks can be shaken by zombie pigs, and these civilian vehicles are like paper in front of zombie pigs. A zombie pig colliding head-on can knock a private car into pieces. Bailan and his truck also followed this group in the retreat. They had a unique way to deal with the zombie pigs. Xia Bai had just given them a bunch of freezing bombs. Facing the zombie pigs rushing towards them, as long as one is thrown out, the zombie pig in the ground will be frozen to death. No matter how fast it charges, it will be nothing but broken ice. But from the battleship, it was really difficult for Xia Bai to judge what was going on with the military and the survivors. Looking from his angle, he could only see fire and dead people everywhere, and there were also soldiers and risk walking among the dead. These people are fully armed, walking through tanks, zombie pigs, vehicles, and flames, but they are firing at the dead bodies on the ground and in scrapped vehicles, and they do so ruthlessly, not sparing bullets, and even taking huge risks. It means to withdraw. From Xia Bai's high altitude position, this scene had the religious horror of a thriller, but at this moment he couldn't control so much. Li Zipping's incident was just a short interlude for Xia Bai. The zombie pigs that appeared here that night were a leveling holy land for Xia Bai. These zombie pigs running around and roaring were alive and kicking energy points. During the process of taking off, there was also a zombie pig that jumped up high on a scrapped car and rushed towards Xia Bai's battleship. But Xia Bai raised the electromagnetic shield of the battleship in an instant. The ferocious zombie pig plunged into the purple shield layer with dancing electric light and was instantly thrown away and hit the chartered car below again. Smash the car to pieces immediately afterwards. Xia Bai's battleship accelerated again, crisscrossing the dense zombie pigs, using the battleship's strong air superiority and powerful firepower to penetrate the night sky, turning and firing sharply. The energy points were like riding rockets, soaring upward point at the same time. Xia Bai is also looking for intelligent zombies. The pig farm is far away from the city, and these zombie pigs must have been attracted by people point. But it's a pity that Xia Bai couldn't find these existences even with the bonus of battleships. This is actually in Xia Bai's estimation. Intelligent zombies are very good at hiding. They hide in corpses or groups of corpses, and pretend to be casual. Who can tell the difference between them and ordinary zombies? Moreover, as far as Xia Bai knows, this type of intelligent zombies can even pretend to be dead. In the previous life, Xia Bai heard from others that intelligent zombies even came up with a method of faking death through other zombie research experiments. The way to do it is to give yourself a knife in the head, but it will not hit the key vital position. However, it is difficult for ordinary non-professionals to tell the difference from the appearance. They can only judge from the zombie's immobile reaction and the brain. That was it. Click to judge that the zombie is dead. This actually takes advantage of human inertia. Who would check a dead zombie that didn't move when it saw a living person and was hit in the head? Thank you Yu Weifeng for becoming the first protector of this book. Thank you for your support and rewards, and then continue to ask for a wave of collection and recommendation votes. Chapter 120. If you don't make an appointment, the price will increase. The fire is burning. Fang Wei stood up leaning against a tank with a broken track behind him, gasping for air as he looked at the flames in front of him. The situation has stabilized. The military's armored forces have completely stopped and become bait to attract the zombie pigs. At the cost, the survivors' convoys roared out. Although they suffered heavy casualties, they soon recovered, disappeared into the vast night. However, zombie pigs are powerful and unique, but they also have limitations. They may cause huge trouble to armored troops and even destroy the tracks, but it is difficult to really shake the armor of a tank, and it is difficult to be as light as human zombies. They were easily piled up into a mountain of corpses and surrounded by sealed tanks. Once the military stabilized their position, the damage they could cause became very limited. Fang Wei looked at the leaping flames with an inexplicable look of panic in his eyes. He took a deep breath and gave the order to let the infantry team who had just fought with him on the ground and suffered heavy losses board the tank nearby. He himself was the first to climb up to the tank behind him. When he stood on top of the tank, he took a slight breath and scanned the entire battlefield, staying for an extra moment on something in the distance. That's the Black Ghost. Fang Wei had already heard of this thing. The existence of this thing was spread by the survivors of the Ice City survivor prison. Even in the army, many people were talking about this thing. Survivors, non-military armed forces, black technology. This is the description of Black Ghost that Fang Wei has heard the most. However, although this thing was rumored to be magical, almost no one had seen it for 3 months after being in the Ice City survivor prison, and many people questioned its existence. Fang Wei had also been a skeptic. Although the military had already announced relevant information about this thing and the measures to be taken if encountered, Fang Wei still couldn't imagine how ordinary people could obtain such obvious military equipment especially the shield on the outer layer of the battleship. Is that an electromagnetic energy shield? But how is it applied? According to the previous orders assigned by the military, if any local army encounters a Black Ghost, they should order a grounding and recruit the armed forces of the other party. But now, Fang Wei looks at the zombie pigs everywhere and feels that there seems to be some difficulty in executing the command point. And according to what Fang Wei just learned, the Black Ghost had just wiped out all the 13 kings. He estimated that if he fired a warning cannon, the other party would also turn against him. Now is the end of the world. Except for people like the 13 kings, most of the survivors are you hit me, and I will hit you, and you are polite, and I'm polite. The most important thing is that Fang Wei is really embarrassed. He doesn't know that Xia Bai is trying to grab energy points by killing zombie pigs everywhere. He thought that Xia Bai is helping them share the pressure by killing zombie pigs with such great effort. Otherwise, what is the opponent doing here, spending energy and ammunition killing zombie pigs? Especially when I think of what the Ice City said about this black ghost. The other party helped the military a lot when they were in Ice City and saved countless survivors. Therefore, in this fire, there is also the bastard of the 13th King Li Ziping, who took advantage of the chaos to serve as a negative example, but Fang Wenyi is too embarrassed to do it. He is reasonable. Others have helped him, and he is an absolutely good person. If he tries to bully others, what kind of people's soldier can he be? What's the difference between Li Ziping and those people who sit on other people's faces and fart? And for some reason, Fang Wenyi felt some unspeakable pleasure when this black ghost killed Li Ziping's group of bastards. Under these factors, even Fang Wenyi felt that the top brass of the military were being unreasonable. There might be some sophisticated technology on this Black Phantom, but this fighter jet did not come from any military base. Having robbed them, rearming them is somewhat excessive. It would be wise to have a good discussion about jointly developing new technologies at this moment. Fang Wenyi had even begun to think about going back to talk to his brothers and help publicize the glorious deeds of this black ghost. But soon, he no longer thought so. The black ghost over there suddenly turned back sharply, seeming to recognize that Fang Wenyi was a leader through his military uniform, and hovered high over here. Immediately afterwards, in Fang Wenyi's somewhat surprised look, a voice came from above the black ghost, which was transmitted to the bottom through the speaker system carried by the battleship. I'm the captain of the battleship, and on behalf of my battleship and all the members on the battleship, I hope you can pass on a message. The last time we were in Bingcheng, Commander Li Jianbei of the 37th Division wanted to contact us, but he was unable to contact us due to various reasons. I personally admire Commander Li very much, so here, I sincerely send a message information. I hope it can be conveyed on your behalf. We and the warships under our jurisdiction are willing to provide military assistance to all troops and survivors under the jurisdiction of the 37th Division and the survivor base in the Changbei Mountain area. The scope of military assistance is limited to the emergency situation at the Changbei Mountain Survivor Base. Whether to provide military assistance, the final interpretation of assistance belongs to the captain. Of course, I may not be needed now, but you can make an appointment. The current price is very cheap. You can make an appointment for military assistance with 100 missiles regardless of type. It is high quality, low price, and a God-given opportunity. If you don't make an appointment, the price will go up when my battleship gets stronger. I must advise Mr. Li to pass by, and don't miss it. Under Fang Wenyi's stunned eyes, the battleship accelerated and disappeared into the vast night sky in an instant. Although this battleship is powerful, it provides military assistance to Nuoda's Changbei Mountain Survivor Base. Isn't this a bit arrogant? A soldier who climbed up from behind was half hanging on the side of the tank and said blankly, "This is." At this moment, Xia Bai is getting down from his position. Of course he is not drifting. The current warship is certainly not qualified to talk about military assistance, but when the warship reaches level 4 or even level 5 in a year or two, he will have the strength to compete with qualified. At this moment, although his battleship's ammunition was running low, its energy points reached an astonishing more than 11,000. And the reason why he said this so arrogantly was, of course, that he considered the future destruction of the Changbei Mountain Survivor Base. If he took a shot of prevention early, he would be better off in the future. He could not sit back and watch the Changbei Mountain Survivor Base be destroyed. Of course, as he said, providing military assistance was not free. Please collect it. Please vote for recommendation. Asking for all kinds of support. Chapter 121, An Unexpected Temptation. South of Liujia Town. Xia Bai's battleship was traveling through the sky. After breaking away from the battle group, he gradually lowered the altitude and landed. The military in Liujia Town cannot die. Their original plan was to retreat with the survivors and withdraw from the dangerous area. Now that the situation has changed, it is impossible for the military to abandon the 2 battalions and the intelligent zombies captured alive. Reinforcement and even fighter planes are likely to be on the way. Xia Bai had a lot of money tonight. Although ammunition and energy were greatly consumed, and the warship was damaged to varying degrees, he gained nearly 4,000 energy points during the day, which directly filled up the warship upgrades. Withdrawing the energy points required for level 4 now can be regarded as retiring with success point in the future. When Xia Bai has the ability, he may find some small citizen villages to eliminate zombies like the military did, but it is unlikely that he will follow the military to pick up the zombies like today. This time he showed up and let go of so many zombies. If you want to attract hatred, the military will probably keep a close eye on you in G province. Xia Bai didn't want to conflict with the military, and he didn't plan to send the battleship out for others to study. He had to be honest for at least a while now. Although the battleship did not have optical stealth technology, the stealth technology was top notch. Unless they met on a narrow road, the military wanted to. It is really not an easy task to find him, but with the capabilities of the military, if you really want to find him, you will definitely be able to find him. As for the Liangzi of the 13th king, he doesn't really like this group of black sheep. If he is really asked for military assistance in the future, the 13th king will definitely be the first one Xia Bai wants to get rid of. The conflict is nothing more than it's just a matter of sooner or later. No matter how powerful the 13 kings are in G province, without the military background, it would be quite difficult to find Xia Bai and the others with less than 10 people and 2 cars in such an apocalyptic world. Survivors are survivors after all. It has only been half a year since the end of the world. As the power grows, the foundation is also limited. The apocalypse has restructured the social structure and will infinitely magnify certain dark sides, but it does not mean that the world will become so-called dark. But Xia Bai doesn't want to initiate this conflict now. Although the power of the 13 kings has not reached its peak, Xia Bai is still in the development stage. If a 3rd level warship dares to go to the survivor base of Changbei Mountain to deal with others, it is not possible. After killing all the 13 kings, he will be shot down by the 2nd Battalion Commander's Italian cannon. The most important thing now is to seize the time to upgrade. This time the smart zombies drove away the zombie pigs, which opened Xia Bai's eyes. At this moment, he even thought to himself that he would search all the pig farms in the 3 eastern provinces and become a pig killing maniac. The energy points a single zombie can provide seem to be related to its size, species, and many other factors. Previously, Xia Bai hunted sparrows outside the Zoo City Hospital and killed nearly 20 of them before getting 3 or 4 energy points. But now a zombie pig has 7 energy points. In the modern world, large wild animals are still hard to find in areas with human activities. However, there are quite a few pig, sheep and cattle breeding farms in the 3 northeastern provinces. NMG further northwest may also be a good choice, but Xia Bai has never been to Inner Mongolia and doesn't understand this kind of thing. It must be a problem to find the sheep all over the mountains and plains. Xia Bai traveled in the direction that the previous survivors had left. When the battleship broke away from the battle, Xia Bai replaced Chen Shai and Sheng from the driving seat. And his battleship is extremely fast. Driven by anti-gravity, the entire battleship buzzes like a wild beast traveling through the sky in the dark night of doomsday. The group of survivors drove along the highway, making it easy to find. When Xia Bai caught up, Enuoda's convoy had already driven several kilometers away, while Xia Bai and Bailan had already entered the communication zone. Within a short distance, they had already contacted each other. When Xia Bai's battleship arrived, the small truck Bailan and the others were separated from the convoy and turned into a very small one on one side along the higher highway. Roadside villages and towns. I plan to go all the way around the villages and towns and say goodbye to this team of survivors and the military once and for all. Even in the night, many people noticed the roaring battleship and seemed particularly excited. Many people even used various lights to shine on Xia Bai from a distance, and some even shouted at Xia Bai, "Shout Black Ghost." This was the first time Xia Bai heard such a title, and he was confused for a while. But he made a lot of money tonight, and it was just when he was eager to retreat. He didn't think much about it, and had no intention of lingering. He followed Bailan and the others from the convoy to the country road below. Behind the minivan, prepare to switch from battleship mode to more energy saving RV mode. However, the moment he slowly landed, a system prompt instantly sounded in his mind. Warning, low-end thermal weapon detected. The moment the system prompt sounded, a flashing red dot instantly lit up on the radar screen on the side of the battleship, quickly heading towards his location point. In fact, Xia Bai could actually see things at this moment. It was a rocket fired by a standard rocket launcher. It came from the small village on the side of the battleship. It was particularly conspicuous and eye-catching in the dark night, when the lights were dimmed in the last days. This thing is a low-end weapon according to the system's judgment and classification, and it is not a powerful weapon for today's warships. But if it can't be hit, who wants to be hit? Xia Bai urgently raised the altitude again, but the battleship was too close to the village. No matter how fast he was, no matter how fast the battleship took off vertically, he could not completely get out of the way of the rocket in such a short period of time. Noodle point. Seeing this, Xia Bai simply raised his outer electromagnetic energy shield again. The energy stored in the solar cell has long been exhausted. Now that the shield is raised, the energy in the primary energy body is burned. However, with the energy of the primary energy body as its function, the state of the electromagnetic shield is more stable, and the bullet hit it, and instantly exploded into a ball of burning flames. The battleship's hull shook slightly, and the whole body sank half an inch. But Xia Bai immediately turned around the battleship, and pointed directly in the direction of the small village here. Passing the battleship, he instantly locked the direction of the rocket launch. It was a two-story building located on the edge of a small village. Through the picture displayed by the battleship's multi-angle camera, Xia Bai could clearly see a person whose entire face was covered in blood and flesh, looking in the direction of Xia Bai through the vast darkness of night. As Xia Bai's battleship turned towards him, he turned around and ran away, disappearing into the shadows behind in the blink of an eye. There is no doubt that this is an intelligent zombie, and it was it that just launched a rocket here. Please vote for recommendations and favorites. Chapter 122 Sweeper. Faced with this intelligent zombie, Xia Bai's response was to directly turn the battleship around and use the machine cannon to destroy the entire building. In the dark night, Xia Bai's battleship's cannons fired wildly. From a distance, his battleship seemed like a black dragon hovering in the sky, spewing anger on the earth. The 30mm caliber machine gun bullets easily tore through the wall, tearing apart the entire building from top to bottom. Even though an energy point had jumped on the energy point display of Xia Bai's battleship, he's still pouring out firepower like crazy. What if there are other zombies on the first floor? He might be able to ignore the ordinary zombies, but as soon as he encounters intelligent zombies, he will definitely kill them all and never leave them alive. When killing intelligent zombies, he doesn't care about the profit or not. He will kill them at all costs. The only 30mm caliber machine gun bullets left in the Xia Bai battleship were used up in just a few minutes, and the building had been forcibly blown down. On the ruins, almost every inch of land was destroyed. Baptized by bullets, smoke and dust rose. Something exploded inside the building, and the flames spread along the ruins of cold creatures in the dark night. From the beginning to the end, Xia Bai's energy point interface only jumped once, and increased by 1 energy point. It seems that there is only one intelligent zombie in this building. Why would the other party launch an attack on the battleship here? Xia Bai drove the battleship back and forth 3 times to this small village, using the images transmitted from all angles of the battleship to carefully determine whether there were any similar intelligent zombies below. However, the village was completely silent. Only a few zombies and large zombie dogs rushed out from the corners of the village following the sound, running around the village like a maze. After thoroughly confirming that there were no suspicious creatures in the village, Xia Bai redirected his fighter plane, landed in front of Bailan's box truck not far away, switched back to the form of the RV, and drove forward. In the back, among the convoy of survivors that was originally moving forward smoothly, many people stopped for a moment and witnessed the whole process with their own eyes, watching a rocket rising from the village, followed by the Black Ghost launched a counterattack and walked away. Many people actually didn't know that the rocket launcher was an intelligent zombie. They thought some survivor had attacked the Black Ghost. They were all stunned for a while. In everyone's minds, the mysterious Black Ghost appeared again. There is an additional attribute of ruthless. In the corner of this group of survivors, in an inconspicuous van lying on the roadside, a man wearing a peaked cap in the dark kept staring at the warship passing by in the dark. There was a slight glimmer of danger in his eyes in the seat behind him. A slightly cold voice said, "Ice City prison is also like this. I have never seen this type of fighter plane in any information. Is it some new weapon of the human military?" The man in the peaked cap shook his head. "Energy shield. That is something that the human military has not developed yet, but regarding their affairs with us, contact the sweepers. Aren't they collecting human weapons? Let them keep an eye on this group of people." In the darkness, the night wind was cold and sharp point at the same moment. Xia Bai and the others were driving away from this area point, although his battleship and Baolan and others looked a little embarrassed. Overall, this trip to Liujia town was not a loss. Xia Bai's previous development in Zhu City had a significant effect at this time. After firing up the last cannon of the battleship, he had collected all the energy points used to upgrade to the 4th level, and even had some energy points rich point. Of course, now is not a good time to upgrade. The battleship will still expand when upgrading from level 3 to level 4, and the overall body will undergo huge changes. Therefore, the time required to upgrade from level 2 to level 3 is not shorter than that of level 2. It takes a full 96 months. Our 96 hours is equivalent to 4 full days and nights. This is nothing before the doomsday, but in the doomsday, it is very dangerous in this wilderness point. Moreover, the battleship cannot move during the upgrade process. Once the upgrade process is interrupted, the upgrade will be interrupted, energy points will be lost, and the battleship itself is likely to be irreparably damaged. Point in the final analysis, the upgrade of a battleship is to transform the battleship in the form of pure energy, provided by energy points. If it were a car, could you repair the engine and drive on the road at the same time? Moreover, the upgrade process of battleships is extremely precise. Each upgrade can be described as an earth-shaking change, and it cannot be sloppy. Moreover, the situation in this life is different from the previous life. In the previous life, only 2 or 3 years after the end of the world, intelligent zombies began to operate on a large scale in various areas. But now, intelligent zombies have appeared early, but their goal seems to have not changed. Because of the existence of the Changbai Mountain Survivor Base, their focus is still here. The number of intelligent zombies participating in this battle during this day alone should be more than 5 people, including even those who were killed. The ones Xia Bai shot to death. These intelligent zombies are competing with the military. Even a swarm of zombie pigs can hardly pose a real threat to a well-prepared military unit. Still showing weakness in a head-on battle. However, what Xia Bai knows better is that these intelligent zombies are inevitable to the Changbai Mountain Survivor Base. He remembers that in the previous life, after the intelligent zombies successfully attacked the Changbai Mountain Survivor Base, they did not seem to kill all humans, raise large groups of male and female survivors in captivity, and prepare to breed from generation to generation, raising humans in captivity. Like pigs, intelligent zombies also understand the principle of sustainable development. Before genetic engineering could not simply and crudely create a person, normal living people were also the biological cornerstone of the zombie group. In the later stages of the apocalypse, Xia Bai even heard about intelligent zombies. All the zombies have found the secret of why they are able to give birth to intelligence, and they can mass produce intelligent zombie individuals. Of course, Xia Bai had never seen this in person, and had never been to the Changbai Mountain Survivor Base after its fall. He had only heard these things, and had no way of proving them. But one thing that is certain is that from the moment they were born, intelligent zombies have been developing and becoming stronger at a speed beyond human imagination. With the cover of a large number of ordinary zombies, it is almost impossible for humans to destroy and exterminate intelligent zombies. In advance, intelligent zombies and even more distant alien creatures. Xia Bai's battleship has been upgraded to level 4, which may be the beginning of truly gathering to compete with these existences. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 123, Side Effects. Xia Bai and the others drove west for about half an hour and finally stopped in an open field covered by white snow. The side effects of the medicine Xia Bai injected came point after about an hour of taking effect. The system's strengthening potion gave Xia Bai a high sense of power expansion and a strength comparable to that of a top awakener, fading like ice and snow. But the side effects were also different from what Xia Bai had imagined. The side effects: Xia Bai originally thought that he was paralyzed and unable to move, or simply passed out. But in fact, Xia Bai did appear to be in a limp state, but it was not as exaggerated as he imagined. He was just dizzy, as if he was drunk, and his eyes were a little dazed, but he was in unusually good spirits. Although he was dizzy and still in good spirits, this strange symptom appeared in Xia Bai. As soon as the symptoms appeared, Xia Bai quickly pressed Chen Shai and Cheng on the driver's seat and went to the medical bay to confirm. This is indeed a side effect of the strengthening medicine, and it will last about 7 hours. Xia Bai planned to just sleep and treat it as a rest, but unfortunately, he was so excited that he couldn't fall asleep and could only sit on the edge of the bed in a daze. When the battleship landed, the night was still deep and everyone was exhausted. Most of them started to rest. They arranged their shifts and started to rest one after another. Bailan came over. This girl looked a little embarrassed. Her hair was messy and there were many small wounds on her body, but she didn't care much about it. She sat down next to Xia Bai and said, "Are you also an awakened person? What happened today?" Xia Bai said in a daze, "I'm taking hormones." So, Bai Lang was stunned for a moment. "Hormone? Do you want to give it a try?" Xia Bai had a strange idea at this moment. An ordinary person can become a powerful being comparable to a top awakened person by taking an injection of strengthening potion. Then if the awakened person takes an injection of this, where's the stuff? Xia Bai couldn't help but look at Bailan beside him, his eyes looking malicious. Bailan was taken aback and said, "Hey, what kind of eyes are you looking at? What kind of hormones are you looking at? Could it be that you got some computer accessories from the adult vending machine on the street?" Xia Bai's head was not spinning much today. He was feeling dizzy, as if he had drunk too much. His thoughts were unclear, but he was still extra excited and energetic. He was stunned and said, "Computer accessories? What the hell?" Bai Lang glanced at him and said, "You seem a little strange today." "Strange? Is it strange?" Xia Bai touched his face. Bailan glanced at him, exhaled, and said, "Sorry, Xia Bai." Bai Lang lowered his head slightly and wrung his hands together. "I'm sorry. When the group of awakened ones took action today, I failed to protect everyone, but instead caused you to turn back." Xia Bai stretched out his hand in a daze, patted Bailan on the shoulder, and said, "No one can solve everything in one go like a superhero. You can't, and neither can I." The first half of Xia Bai's words was considered normal because he really felt from the bottom of his heart that Bailan had done a good job. Even he, in that situation, did not dare to jump out of the car. Li Zipping tried his best, but then half a sentence, maybe because of the side effects, Xia Bai's words were a little floating. "It's like men and women. Men can create an army of billions. Isn't it amazing? But without women, men can't give birth. Come on, kid, in this world." Bai Lan turned around like lightning, glared at Xia Bai, and pushed Xia Bai. She didn't use much strength, but Xia Bai fell to the ground softly, looking at her with an innocent look. Bailan glared at her, turned around and left. Xia Bai was a little confused. Did he say something wrong? He sat on the ground and thought for a while, feeling that he should calm down. So he stood up unsteadily and got out of the RV. The wilderness of Doomsday is particularly peaceful, and the cold wind in winter in the 3 eastern provinces is also very cold. He didn't know whether it was the cold wind or the side effects that had subsided after a while, but Xia Bai felt that his head was slightly clearer. Most of the others had rested at this time, and Bailan had gone to sleep. Xia Bai looked around and found that the first person on duty was Yihan Yu. This girl was wrapped in a big black cotton padded jacket that didn't fit very well and was leaning against a box truck on one side. She was smoking carelessly. When she saw Xia Bai coming out, she waved to Xia Bai enthusiastically. I don't know whether it was because of the cold or the injuries on her body. Sometimes her expression was normal, and sometimes she bared her teeth and gasped. Xia Bai thought for a while, and came to her side. Hanyu took out a cigarette for Xia Bai. I found it in your car, so I smoked it. You're quite familiar with it. Xia Bai found that not only did she seem to have drunk too much today, but she also said whatever came to her mind without thinking. Why are you out on night watch? The first class is the most leisurely. Hanyu grinned. I ask myself to behave well, so that you can take an ying, and I can't sleep either. Don't look at me jumping around. Once I'm injured, it hurts so much when I lie down. Xia Bai said, it's my dream to join the awakened one, but the cigarettes are all mine. Little girl, stop smoking. He shakily lit a cigarette and took a nice sip. He felt much better and his head was clear. Xia Bai thought for a moment and said, actually, you don't have to work so hard. If you are injured, just take a good rest. Hanyu said, I should do something, otherwise Chen Yingying and I would have the nerve to just stay in a big team like you. She pursed her lips and smiled and said, if I had done something earlier, all my sisters wouldn't have to die. Xia Bai glanced at her, opened his mouth, thought for a moment, and said, thank you for tipping me off. Hanyu glanced at him. It's not a tip. At that time, I thought I was going to die. I just thought you could help Yingying, but I didn't expect your neighbor to be so powerful. In fact, we are not bad people. Although it seems that we are the kind of people who are destined to fail to go to college due to poor study and have to join the society early and bully this and that all day long, but we also have our own line and will never cross it. Compared with some people, we will end in the end. A person with a different face is much stronger. Xia Bai said, are you bragging? Hanayu's face turned slightly red and she said, when someone joins someone else, don't you have to praise yourself first? By the way, Chen Yingying can also repair generators. This chapter is a bit of a spoof. Then I ask for favorites, recommendation votes, and all kinds of support. Chapter 124 New Plan. Hanyu hesitated for a few words, probably not knowing what to say. She sighed and smiled bitterly. To be honest, I don't know what to do anymore. When my sisters were still there, I was the eldest sister and the backbone. Everyone was waiting for me to make my decision, so I had to do everything well, and be the most confident person. At that time, I actually had a goal. I wanted to protect them and my sisters. But I'm actually more confused than anyone else. Although I was fooling around outside on the first night of the apocalypse, the first thing I did after we escaped the chaos in the early days of the apocalypse was to go home. I wanted to find my father and mother are my younger brothers, but my father turned into a zombie. My mother ran away early with my younger brother. She didn't even forget to take away the gold and silver jewelry, but she forgot to take away her daughter. I actually don't blame her. In that situation, who knows whether I will die or live? But I'm really at a loss. Everyone says that you have to struggle to stay alive in the doomsday, but is life really that important? Death may be even more important. Liberation. I have never been afraid of death, and I have no desire to live for a long time. At that time, I just wanted to save the people around me, but I seemed destined to be a person with little ability. Let me tell you, I originally wanted to grow a batch of food in the school, but I put a lot of effort into finding seeds. But when I looked back, I realized that there was no way to dig out the soil from under the plastic floor of the school playground, and all the seeds were wasted. Are you listening to me? Hanyu turned around and saw that Xia Bai had fallen asleep leaning against the wall of the truck at some point. There was still a cigarette in his mouth, but his body had already collapsed halfway. He didn't know how long he had been asleep. Hanyu stared at this person and sighed. This is actually not Xia Bai's fault. The side effects of this strengthening potion are very strange. At first, she was extremely energetic, but after this state lasted for an hour, she became drowsy, as if she had taken sleeping pills. Even if Xia Bai thought that he could not sleep here, he could not succeed. And on a small slope nearly 1,000 meters away from where Xia Bai and the others were, as the lights on Xia Bai's side were completely extinguished, a man whose whole body was wrapped in a shroud was confirming. After the drone that had been wandering around for reconnaissance disappeared, he slowly stood up. He stared into the distance with his binoculars for a moment and said something on the walkie-talkie point. So further behind him, a fleet of modified cars all painted black slowly drove towards them. When Xia Bai woke up again, he found that he was already lying on the bed of the RV. After this sleep, Xia Bai's condition recovered. There was no one in the RV. When he walked out, he saw Bailan and the others gathered together to cook porridge. After Xia Bai's edification in the past few months, they also attached great importance to every meal in the apocalypse. As long as they had the conditions, they would definitely make a good meal. Xia Bai didn't sleep very long. It was only around 6 o'clock in the morning. In fact, you can cook porridge in the RV, but Bailan was obviously worried about disturbing Xia Bai, so she took the trouble to light a fire outside. When he came out, everyone gathered around the pot on the fire. Chen Yingying looked at the rice in the pot and the salted duck eggs that Bailan took out one by one and said, "Look at others, they are also in the pot. People from Zoo City, why is the gap so big?" Yi Hanyu smacked her lips and said, "I don't know who it is. When I said I was going to buy a duck and chicken farm, they told me that this was dangerous and that they wouldn't let me go." Chen Yingying shouted, "I'm talking about salted duck eggs. That kind of place is full of zombie chickens and ducks, right?" Yi Hanyu pouted, "It's better to catch tiger cubs than in tiger's den. If you get native duck eggs and salted duck eggs, don't you get as much as you want?" Everyone looked at this scene and felt it was a little funny. It seemed like a scene from their junior high school days. Bailan also smiled. At this moment, she noticed Xia Bai coming from behind. She smiled and served Xia Bai a bowl of porridge and asked him to sit down next to her. Xia Bai touched his head and asked, "Did I say anything nonsense last night?" He felt like he was hungover after drinking too much. He only had a vague impression of what happened during the most serious period after the side effects started last night. He couldn't remember what happened specifically. It's clear Bailan glanced at him, smiled and shook her head without any intention of responding to Xia Bai. Xia Bai could only touch his nose, looking confused. At this time, Hao Zhuang said, "Boss, what should we do next? Do we also want to go to the Changbei Mountain survivor base?" Xia Bai raised his head and found that not only everyone in the field was looking at him, but also Hao Zhuang, Bailan, Chen Qianqing and the others. Xia Bai smiled and said, "No, we are not going to the Changbei Mountain survivor base. We are going to Shengjing, and before that, we have to find a group of people." His eyes narrowed slightly. The battleship is about to reach level 4, and he doesn't have to be so petty anymore. After breakfast, they set off immediately. Although this was a wilderness, they stayed here all night and attracted many scattered zombies, either from surrounding residences or from nearby roads. Followed the human aura, but the number couldn't be large, and naturally it couldn't bring any threat to Xia Bai and the others at this moment. Xia Bai's battleship opened the way, and they headed towards Xinjiang. It was the capital city of Ji province, and it was also a huge city with a huge population. There were countless zombies and extreme mutants living in it. Xia Bai had plenty of supplies, and the battleship itself could produce most of the things, so he didn't. The idea of challenging the zombie swarm in a provincial capital city with a population of tens of millions, maybe he can do it in the future, but right now his small stature on a third-tier battleship is still not enough. Their car stopped near a water tower outside the city. This is an old building, and there is a room of more than 100 square meters on the second floor below the water tower. Xia Bai stood under the water tower and raised his head to take a look, feeling as if he was in another world. This is the place he visited in his previous life. At that time, he fled all the way from Longjiang province and met this group of survivors here. Xia Bai did not deliberately hide his traces. The people above had discovered them long ago. A young man stood on the iron corridor outside the room and shouted, "Brother, what are you doing here?" As he spoke, he raised a rifle in his hand, looking a little nervous. Xia Bai knew this person. His name was Li Yian. He was a former firefighter with a rare warm-heartedness in the apocalypse. But Xia Bai knew them, but these people didn't know Xia Bai. As for how to become familiar again in this life, Xia Bai had already thought about it. With his order, the battleship's RV form was instantly released, the anti-gravity engine started, and it slowly rose into the sky with a huge buzzing sound. The 100mm muzzle of the naval gun directly hit Li Yuan's face. Dear book lovers, please give me some support. Collect and recommend your votes. Chapter 125 Deception. There was a click sound point. That was the sound of the rifle in Li Yuan's hand hitting the ground point. The former firefighter was stunned for a moment before he suddenly reacted. He took half a step back hurriedly, raised his hands, and said, "I surrender. I'm not a deserter. Everyone in our brigade is dead, so I." At this time, when they heard the buzzing outside, people in the room also came out one after another. 2 middle-aged men and 2 middle-aged women, each holding weapons in their hands, came out and saw Xia Bai's battleship, but they were all dumbfounded. At this time, after Xia Bai briefly showed off his battleship, he walked out directly with Bai Lin and Hao Zuang, and went upstairs along the external iron stairs. A man headed by this group of people stepped forward to greet them. He was a middle-aged man with dark skin and a simple and honest face. His name was Dong Jianguo, a former veteran. Sometime before the end of the world, he worked as a transporter for peach and plum bread. He was always kind, but he was also a little clever and kind. Courage. When the apocalypse broke out, the guy took the risk to get a large truck of bread, which became the key ration for their group to survive in the early days of the apocalypse. Xia Bai came to this group of people for a reason. In his previous life, he stayed with Dong Jianguo's group for more than a month. Although he was later dispersed during the hunt of survivors of the 13 Kings, he also had a deep understanding of this group of people. It can be said that he knows the basics and is one of the few down-to-earth people in the apocalypse. And the most important thing is that there are 5 people on Dong Jianguo's side: a firefighter, a veteran, and a middle-aged man named Fu Deshan. They were also there before the apocalypse. Those who do physical work have ready-made combat power, and Xia Bai remembered that the 2 middle-aged women had quite a good background. One named Huang Qiulan was the boss of a small company before the end of the world, and the other Chen Heikin was an English translator. These 2 were considered half-elites before the end of the world, adapt quickly after the apocalypse, and have very strong overall abilities at this moment. Dong Jianguo greeted Xia Bai and said with a smile on his face, "Everyone, are we soldiers of the People's Liberation Army?" Xia Bai shook his head and said, "No." As soon as he said this, Li Yuan behind him showed a look of relief, but the rest of his expression was not very good. If the soldiers are okay, in these days of war and chaos, the soldiers may not all be good people, but no matter how bad they are, there is always a ray of humanity left in the apocalypse. At least they are human. But if they weren't soldiers, but survivors, with such a momentum, I'm afraid there would be big trouble. Dong Jianguo's face looked a little ugly. After all, it had been half a year since the end of the world, and he had seen many storms, big and small, so he was not too arrogant at the moment. He said, "Then brothers, you are." Xia Bai smiled and said, "You can rest assured, we are not here to steal your bread, we are here to negotiate business." Dong Jianguo was stunned for a moment. He turned around and glanced at their den behind him. After thinking about it, he asked tentatively, "Do you want our pure water?" Xia Bai shook his head. "I want to buy someone." Dong Jianguo frowned and said, "Brother, I don't understand what you mean. There are so few of us here." Xia Bai lit a Chinese stick and said, "If you mess with me, you will need food, drink, and weapons. We are not members of the military system, we are also ordinary people. If you mess with us, there is no control." He took a puff of cigarette and nodded towards the dark battleship still suspended in midair. The implication of his words was already very clear in the apocalypse. This simple and crude method is enough to recruit people temporarily. In the apocalypse, there is not much trust between people, and it is ineffective to talk about it. The relationship between people is also established over a long time, and eating and drinking, the 2 guarantees of and survival, are enough to make everyone's heart beat. This is also the reason why Xia Bai showed off the battleship immediately. This thing is unbelievable in the face of the power of any ordinary survivor in the current doomsday. Even Li Ziping is shocked, let alone Dong Jianguo and the others. Dong Jianguo was still a little hesitant, or in other words, he was actually a little confused at the moment. Early in the morning, a group of strangers drove up to your door in a sharp black battleship and said they wanted to take you in as their little brother. who wouldn't be confused about who they would be. For the same reason, Dong Jianguo was also a little wary. Why us? Because we are short of people here. I can tell you clearly that we want to go to Shengjing to establish a survivor base. Think about it. We have the tools and the weapons to establish a survivor base with hundreds of people. Isn't it difficult? The only thing we lack is people. As you can see, we only have 2 cars and less than 10 people. We are all sensible people. It's okay for such a few people to run around in the apocalypse with weapons, but if we want to build a base, the place cannot be held, so we plan to recruit some people along the way, and then select some reliable ones to become the real leaders among us. In the future, these people will be the ones we want to build leadership within the survivor base. Xia Bai smiled and said, you are here next to Xinjiang, so you can't stay for a long time. I don't need to tell you. You should also know this. Even if it is good here, you will eventually go to the Changbei Mountain Survivor Base. Changbei Mountain Survivor Base. You may not have been there, but I think you can also imagine that the 5 of you were at the bottom of society when you arrived at that kind of place. Perhaps you died inexplicably before reaching the Changbei Mountain Survivor Base. The choice is actually very simple. With us, you will have food, drink, rifles, pistols, and rocket launchers. In the future, there will be a survivor base in Nuoda. You are the masters of the apocalypse. Of course, this is the apocalypse. I cannot guarantee your life or death, but you have also seen that my battleship is parked there, fully armed and militarized. It is safer than you counting bullets and carrying these guns. Of course, you can also choose to go to the Changbei Mountain Survivor Base in the future and become a group of regular soldiers. An ordinary survivor of the Erbaching. After Xia Bai said this, everyone in front of him looked thoughtful. I have to say that Xia Bai's painting of this cake is so beautiful. To go to the Changbei Mountain Survivor Base, you have to rely on others, but if you follow Xia Bai, you may become a top figure in the survivor base. Hao Zuan, who was behind him, couldn't help but whisper to Bailan secretly, how did I find out that he is so good at deceiving? Bai Lang was thinking more. She knew that Xia Bai's words might be misleading, but since he was so detailed, this was probably Xia Bai's plan. Over there, Dong Jianguo still seemed a little hesitant. Although he was a very good honest person, he had been accustomed to being honest all his life. In the face of this kind of thing, it was difficult for him to make decisions, and he was more accustomed to sticking to the rules. But at this time, Huang Qiulan from behind suddenly took a step forward and said, I'm willing to fuck you, please. Collect it. Please vote for recommendation. Asking for all kinds of support. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.